Good evening. Welcome to the August 21st Village Board regular meeting. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, liberty and justice.
Trustee Bazemore?
Present.
Trustee Levin?
Present.
Trustee Herrera?
Present.
Trustee Quesada?
Present.
Mayor Gourdine?
Present.
So we're going on to the public hearings in the matter of proposed local law number 4 of 2019 titled A Local Law Amending Chapter 1144 Electrical Standards of the Village of Ossining Code. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board on this public hearing?
I'm not seeing anyone interested in discussing the proposed changes to the electrical.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So public hearing
I
and
just want to make sure. That was a motion to close the public hearing?
Yeah, to close the public
Okay. All right, moving on.
Okay. Public hearing in the matter of proposed local law number 5 of 2019 titled A Local Law Amending the Chapter 201 Plumbing of the Village of Ossining Code. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board on this public hearing? Do I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So, Stuart, just for a matter of clarity for process, now that we have closed the public hearing, these will be
on the September 4th agenda for approval by the board.
great. And if anybody's interested in looking at the draft proposals, they can go to the village website, and they are linked in a couple of places, including on tonight's agenda.
Okay, moving on to the mayor's and trustees' announcements.
Does anybody have announcements today?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So this is week 3 of the county-wide and statewide Did You Know series. As you know, a couple months ago, the state legislature and the governor, after months of advocating for housing justice bills, including the Emergency Tenant Protection Act, the right to leases, they were signed into law and are now in effect. So every week, what I've been doing is following the steps of many nonprofits and groups in Ossining and throughout Westchester by sharing a Did You Know fact that applies to Ossining. So this week's is, did you know a late fee for rent can no longer be charged? A late fee for rent cannot be charged within 5 days of a missed payment and cannot exceed 5% of the rent or $50, whichever is less. So that's a new policy that affects us right here in the village. And next week I'll come up with more. The other announcement is this Saturday, August 24th from 12:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. The Galata House is having a family fun day and music festival at Nelson Park. According to the flyer, there'll be food, rides, inflatables, arts and crafts, golf, go-karts, bumper carts, petting zoo, and more, and music. It's a free event, no admission. And the last event that I was asked to share, which is an annual tradition, is Down to Earth Markets is having their corn roast at 10:30 a.m. on Saturday, and it's free. So I encourage you to stop by, do some shopping, but also pick up some delicious local corn, and that's going to be going on for about 2 hours in our downtown. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else with announcements? 11? Then the one thing that I will update folks on is I imagine that village manager may augment my comments, but this afternoon, thank you very much to Karen DeTore for arranging for us to go down and visit our counterparts in New Rochelle and learn about the process that they have undergone in recent years. They've created an overlay zone where and had a really interesting approach to their development. And while there's a long list of big differences between New Rochelle and Ossining in scope and in the priorities, there was also an equally long list of interesting strategies that they use to achieve some of their goals and address some of their challenges that could be perhaps adapted to help us address some of our most difficult challenges, particularly, for example, they have, when developers come in, there is a parking fund. So they might be able to buy their way out of parking spots, and that money goes into a parking fund that in that case, the city may use to create additional parking elsewhere where it's needed in the community. So it's creative solutions to some of the challenges that we have. And obviously one of our greatest challenges that we have is to balance an interest in development and investment in our community with a very crowded school district. And so we've already reached out to the school district and let them know, in fact, invited them to participate today in exploring what are some creative ways to proactively address our greatest challenges, those being among them. So it's all part of our approach to having some very thoughtful, well thought out decision making when it comes to comprehensive planning, and in this case theirs was very specific to a particular district, but it came about after a year of reaching out to the community, which is something we are already beginning with the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. We just had our first meeting last week, and the first challenge for us is figuring out how to move forward with getting a consultant on board and doing more public engagement. So there's much more to come, but today's learning journey, as Karen calls it, was a trip down to New Rochelle, and that included a tour in their new, just being launched, they call it Circuit NR. I think it's their little half a dozen people in an electric trolley that goes around the city, and you can call it on an app like with Uber, and it's on the list of really interesting things that we've been looking at for improving mobility in our community on a local level, so you can get from one neighborhood in Ossining to another neighborhood. So there's a lot of exciting things to learn from each other. And with that, Madam Manager.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board of Trustees. Good evening, everyone. So I think we may have mentioned this last week, but we did have our first comprehensive planning steering committee meeting last week. And with input from the steering committee, we will be issuing a request for a proposal for a comprehensive planning consultant. In addition to the steering committee, we will be organizing subcommittees to focus on very specific aspects of our comprehensive plan, such as economic development, the school district, parking, transportation, environmental sustainability, recreation, and other things that are important to the way we work, live, and play here in Ossining. Some of you may have noticed last week there was a film crew, and you would have seen them at Squire House on Main Street and down at Henry Gourdine Park. They were filming a commercial, and Ossining is a popular filming spot. We are sought after due to the architectural period appeal of our Main Street and other community assets. And while this provides some revenue, it can sometimes create inconveniences and disturbances to residents and businesses. And we really strive to make sure that production companies are considerate to all individuals and entities impacted by filming, and we will continue to work on that because, especially if there's street closing or anything, that can always be, that's always an issue. But we are encouraging our film crews, instead of bringing in their own food service, to make sure that if they're filming here, they're shopping here and eating here. So there is also that benefit as well. I've been conducting some interviews this week and next week for the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Historic Preservation Commission, and we're looking for people to fill open seats, as well as we're looking to add alternates who can be in the mix, so that make sure that we always have a quorum at meetings, and to create a pipeline of people who can participate in these land use boards. We have a great pool of applicants who are from all walks of life and experiences, and they provide a tremendous amount of different perspectives and a lot of enthusiasm, along with a desire to help our community. So I will be sharing my appointment recommendations with you following these interviews, which are going through next week. And as the mayor mentioned, we made a field trip to New Rochelle, and the purpose of this was the mayor, myself, and town supervisor Levenberg was to really learn more about the proactive way that proactive approach to development that New Rochelle had and the way they're dealing with some issues, some that are unique to New Rochelle, but some that are universal and some with particular relevance to Ossining. And this involves a different way of planning and upfront environmental review process that streamlines the development process, tremendous amount of community engagement and buy-in in planning process, but ultimately a development process that facilitates development in the vision that the community has determined. So it was a really interesting trip, and we did learn a lot, and I think there are a lot of applications for both the village and the town as we embark on updating our respective comprehensive.
Karen, Madam Manager, any update with the planner's office, and are you prepared to talk about the expansion of your office with respects to personnel? Okay.
Administrative reports from Corporation Counsel Stuart Kahan.
Thanks, Martha. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. I do want to thank everyone who was of assistance in drafting the proposed local laws 4 and 5. We did get comments from the public. I got a number of phone calls, as well as assistance from my Deputy Corporation Counsel, Sonia Tanksley, my paralegal, Lisa Ferguson, and the Building Department, including Joe Augustinelli, all the code enforcement officers, and Assistant Building Inspector Carlo Valenti were all of great assistance with regard to this. We have a planning board meeting this Tuesday night, which is the 27th of August. It is a very busy agenda, and all of the applications for that agenda are linked on the website. And if you go to the planning board and go to the agenda, you can see all of the different plans and proposals that have been submitted. We invite the public to attend that meeting if they have any questions with regard to any of the applications that are on that night. The next meeting before we come back here, there will, I'm just looking at the calendar now. Actually, the next HPC meeting will be on September the 9th because the 2nd is Labor Day. There will be 1 or 2 matters, I believe, on the agenda that evening as well. And again, all folks are obviously invited to attend that. And there is a zoning board meeting on September the 10th. I just let folks know that. It is, as of right now, a lengthy agenda that night, including some slightly different matters that do not usually come before the Zoning Board of Appeals. And all of those also are linked on the website, and you will be able to get all the attachments for that if you are interested. Thank you.
Police Chief Kevin Sylvester.
Good evening. Lots going on at the police department as we head towards the end of summer. Over the last couple of weeks since we last met, we've had Cops and Kids kickball at Nelson Park, coffee with a cop at the farmer's market. And if you've been to the train station, you may have seen the revised traffic plan as a result of some of the repairs being made to the Ossining train station. We're going to continue to ask everybody not to stop on the roadway leading up to the train station or on top of the bridge. There is no standing, stopping, or parking whatsoever on that platform, and we're going to have officers there encouraging people not to do that. And by encouraging, we mean we're now writing tickets. So please don't stop on that roadway. You cause traffic, and even if it's just a moment for you, it causes several moments for those behind you. So try and make it fair for everyone. In line with traffic, as we look towards back to school, last week a video had been released by the school district showing the new, or at least portions of the new traffic plan for Ossining High School. There's going to be lots of communication going forward over the next week or two for that. Tomorrow we plan to film, once our drone pilots will be back from Advanced Drone Operator School. We intend to film some overhead footage so everybody can see exactly how that's going to work. Much like the plan at the train station, we're going to ask people. I'm so glad we have so many people here to hear this today. Usually I'm talking to no one.
You're always talking to us.
I'm talking to you folks, yes, but I tell you, that's a conversation for later. So what's going to happen is the biggest part that we're going to ask everybody is the traffic plan is going to essentially flow in from Wolden Road and out onto Ellis Place. It's a circular pattern where you'll be able to drive through. There's a new driveway, and what we'll be asking people is no longer to drop off students or anyone for that matter, no stopping, standing, or parking during pickup and drop off on M. Wilton Place unless you're in a designated parking spot. Last year we had a student struck by a vehicle over there, and all of this, not directly in relation to that event. This has been long in the planning, but we're looking to make that safer for all of our students, and one of the ways we can do that is by asking both students, parents, and those driving through to be a little bit more careful around, which includes not stopping on that roadway. There is, however, going to be a very robust driveway there with an opportunity for everybody to drive into the school and drop off at a very safe location, and there shouldn't be many delays. Over the first 3 weeks of schools, we're going to have both security guards at some of the driveways where you won't be allowed in, but there'll be police officers on scene at the entrances and exits helping to facilitate traffic, and I know that some people are particularly concerned about how Route 9 will be, so we will be there as well helping to flush out the buses until everybody can get the hang of this. Ultimately, our job is going to be mostly educational in this. We hope for it not to be an enforcement operation, but if people fail to comply, we always have those tickets in hand. So work with us. No stopping, standing, or parking on Ellis Place in the middle of the road while school drop-off and pick-up are going. You really shouldn't stop in the lane of traffic ever to drop people off. In line with that, we're going to be speaking to students because I know that as much as we can blame the parents for the way they drive, we have seen some behavior that is questionable from our students. So we're going to be meeting with both our freshman orientation class next week and then the following week with our new 6th graders, and then hopefully with all the rest of the student body after that to discuss things like crossing roads and behavior on Van Cortlandt Avenue and how to get to Lucy's safely without darting out in front of traffic. So we're going to try and keep that as lighthearted as possible, but this is a serious conversation, and it takes not only good driving but responsible pedestrian behavior in order for us all to be able to go safe. Block party number 4 was supposed to be today. We canceled it for weather that never happened, but apparently New York City took that for us, and we're grateful for that. However, tomorrow night, 5 p.m. in Dale Avenue Park, we are going to do it anyway. So the big theme for tomorrow is back to school. We are giving away backpacks. They are while supplies last, but from what I understand, we have hundreds of them. So if your student needs school supplies or back to school stuff, tomorrow is the day. So 5 to 7 p.m. in Dale Avenue Park, or 5 to 7-ish, because we usually stay until we run out of food. Other stuff going, sorry, I'm long tonight. Other stuff going on, we are still looking for school crossing guards. We have 2 openings, and all of that information is posted on the Village's website. It's on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and it pays $18.15 an hour, so it's a pretty good gig for somebody looking for part-time work. All the information on how to apply is contained in those postings. September is Hunger Action Month, so look for stuff for us there. We'll be working with Feeding Westchester as always. And an early invite now, September 7th, we'll be playing softball against the Ossining Fire Department. And I don't know what charity we're raising money for, but it will be for something. And I'm hoping to still make the team after we found out that some of our new hires were college athletes. So we will see. That's all for tonight. That's a long one.
Might have a little bit of pull in that one.
Is there anyone here who would like to make an organization announcement?
An organizational announcement is if anybody has any organizations you're involved in, if you've got a fundraiser coming up, some of the things that we announce on behalf of groups sometimes. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Moving into board resolutions, is there anyone here who wishes to address the board on any of the resolutions this evening?
You know what? I'm wondering if maybe we want to go a little bit out of order because I see we have a number of folks here to speak. And we have our auditor here. Trust me on this. We have our auditor here. And I think you're just giving us a brief report because there's going to be a more full report coming to us in September. So if everybody's okay with that, if there's no objection, I'd like to get a brief report from the auditor. And then we'll move into board resolution comments. Welcome, and please introduce yourself because I don't have your information in front of me. Or Tom,
Brendan
Tom,
Kennedy.
did you want to introduce? I'm sorry. Our treasurer, Tom Warren, is here. We jumped around a little bit, so everybody's a little.
So this is the firm
guard.
partner from BST and Company CPAs, Brendan Kennedy.
Welcome. Thank you.
Hey, folks. Thank you for having me on such short notice. I'd reached out to Tom, and Karen had mentioned that I was in the neighborhood, and perhaps it made sense to give just a brief status of the 2018 audit. Today, actually, we provided with the village with drafts. Right now, I know that Tom and Dale are looking at them. I know this because they've already started asking me questions about them. But with that said, I just wanted to give you a couple minutes here on the status of the audit. I know it's a little later than we've traditionally presented in the past, which is why I wanted to be here today. Overall, things went very, very well. As you know, you have a very strong finance department. There was, we received the full cooperation of everyone that we came into touch with. No adjustments to the trial balance as a result of our audit procedures, and everything went really smoothly. The biggest thing you're going to see when you do get drafts is the adoption of GASB 75. That's the other post-employment accounting standard. It's been decimating net position, which is your full accrual statement across New York State since that accounting standard went into place. It's of no consequence, I don't believe, to the bond raters because it's information that's existed forever. It's just being memorialized from the footnotes into the financial statements. So with that said, if there's any questions you folks have in regards to the audit, please let me know. We expect to make have the statements finalized, I would say, by the end of the month, depending on the back and forth that we have with Tom and his crew. But overall, a positive audit is, again, no control deficiencies or matters like that we present to you here today.
And you're scheduled to come back to visit the board at the work session on September 25th.
Yep. So if there's any questions between now and then, feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, I was in Dobbs Ferry and thought it'd be good just to give you folks an update and let you know things are going very, very well.
Great.
Thank you.
Glad to hear it. We
Thank
look
you.
forward to the full report next month.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
Good night.
Thank you.
Leaving on a high.
Okay, back to village board resolutions. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board on any of the resolutions this evening?
Am I supposed to introduce myself at all? Or?
Your name and where you're from, please.
Eric Garrity, Village of Ossining resident. A community member approached us months ago about helping to organize and facilitate the creation of an event, the Big Os Barbecue. We put some study to it and came to the conclusion that a barbecue event that truly represented the character of Ossining would be multicultural. Instead of the stereotypical perception of barbecue, let's showcase the diversity of Ossining by defining barbecue as open flame cooking, whatever that means to the cultures represented by each establishment. We began reaching out to a handful of businesses to gauge interest. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Immediately, we found support from a wide variety of businesses: Peruvian, Turkish, Jamaican, El Salvadorian, Colombian, Mexican, and of course, traditional Americana. So now that the excitement is there, how do you make it a valuable experience to the people of Ossining as well as the businesses of Ossining? You start by making it accessible. Some events will charge a fee to the public to attend, and we didn't want that. Some events will charge an exorbitant fee to the vendors, and we didn't want that either. We wanted to eliminate all of the barriers that might prevent participation from local vendors or community members. Now, all of this well-intentioned community spirit doesn't override the fact that we have to pay the state liquor authority, or that each food vendor has to pay the county department of health $100 for the privilege of serving food, or the amount each vendor has to pay to ensure their ability to do this. And then there's the tent rental fees on the dining tent, the stage, entertainment, bathroom facilities, promotions, and so forth. So now the reality sets in. Why doesn't this happen more often? Because it's expensive. If you take a small-scale event budget and distribute it across 20 vendors, you're still looking at a cost of over $400 per local business. That doesn't include the cost of the food or the labor to prepare and serve it. Staffing is a whole other issue. Most of the local business owners that are not present here tonight, because their margins are so tight that they don't have the resources to step away from running their daily operations. It's important to us that this event doesn't further drain the limited resources of our friends and neighboring small businesses. In an effort to lower the vendor fees, we are already securing private sponsorships, either direct financial contributions or in-kind contributions. Sinks and Kill Brewery is donating our labor and using our estimated alcohol sales to offset the costs. We are here again tonight to ask the village to support the Big Os Barbecue as a co-sponsor or whatever the board sees fit by waiving all fees associated with the event, as it is their habit with events that are not exclusively Ossining businesses. If you've lived in Ossining for a while, you've seen businesses open and close, reinvent themselves, change locations, or come up with all sorts of creative ideas to do whatever it takes to hang on. There's always an outpouring of support when a small local business shutters its doors. We as a community shouldn't wait until then. The makeup of Ossining's customer base is not wealthy. We are a working class community. However, our burdens are no different than other more affluent parts of the county: rent, taxes, insurance, payroll, ingredients, electricity. Some days are better than others. I remember running into Luis at First Village Coffee before our doors opened when we were still building out. He was lamenting, what more can we do? There's only so much draw a coffee shop can have on our downtown. We need more businesses, more foot traffic. The significance of that statement didn't hit me until we were well into our first year. We absolutely need more foot traffic to help all of us survive. One business does not turn a community into a destination, but a collective of businesses. The foundation already exists. We need an opportunity to showcase it. So here we are, asking for your support and providing you with an opportunity to play an active role in growing our local economy. We don't want to see any more places close. We want more businesses to open and our streets filled and buzzing with excitement. I think that it is a shared mission we can all get behind. So I urge you to pass Resolution D and please waive the fees associated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just in the interest of disclosure, Eric Garrity is my husband, the gentleman who just spoke. Next.
Michael Turco, Ossining resident. Mayor Gourdine and the board. I'm a lifelong resident of Ossining, being born and raised in Briarcliff Manor where I attended school, to being married and raising our children, first in a home we owned in the village, now in the town. Pretty unique if you ask me, not to mention my wife's family, whose ancestors go back 150 years. I am Mike Turco, the guy who originally came up with the name and the idea behind Big Os Barbecue. We're here again at another meeting to ask the village to help with this event by waiving our costs related to fees. Many years ago, I find myself in a conversation with a few people standing around after a chili cook-off, a fundraiser for a couple guys running for local office. I ironically had won. It was a small group of 20 or so residents. People laughed and ate, kids ran and played, some music was on. The night was a hit. That night brought a variety of chili and what chili meant to whomever was cooking it. Mine was a beef, veal, pork, with hints of bacon, cinnamon, and chocolate. It wasn't only chili. Manny, I believe your family was there. They made empanadas. Another family made venison stew, pasta fagioli. Very interesting, but it was Ossining. That's who we are. Different walks of life from different ethnicities coming together, crossing lines, this time also with food. We discuss other events like this and how much a success one would be. Manny, I'm not sure if you remember, but you were a part of that conversation, as well as former trustee DeRayo. Fun night. Because of my love of barbecue, which started when I was a kid, culinary school, where I was able to hone my skills, the Big Apple Barbecue in New York City, which I've attended for many years, and the fact that I believe that everyone loves barbecue, Big Os Barbecue was born. We couldn't ask for a better play on words. Thank you, Ossining. My intention was to bring our diverse community tighter together, and what I had learned was to do it with food, drink, music, and games. Families and friends, new and old, being together at our own riverfront. What more could we ask for? Bring your idea of barbecue and what it means to you. I had talked about it for years and didn't know how to get it started. In a passing conversation with Eric Garrity, I mentioned the name with my big, broad, and bold idea and asked for any suggestions he may have, and he immediately said, Mike, the focus has to be on Ossining. It took a few seconds for it to sink in, and then we were in agreement. I knew of Eric's drive and determination, his connection to our community, and of course the beer and brewery. Within days, he had meetings scheduled and emails written. No one would have got this going the way he did, not even myself. Anyone and everyone we have talked to about this event have been more than willing to help and participate in some way, until of course the night of August 14th, when two trustees put on what I saw as the do as I say, not as I do routine. Even still, I've been stopped by a dozen neighbors asking if I was the guy at the village meeting. A friend watching live was texting me during it saying, are you kidding me? I'll pay it. Everyone is saying great idea. Another neighbor even saying she would sponsor 5 restaurants' fees. This is loud and clear. The community likes the idea and will go to lengths to make it happen. I never once thought we'd have this kind of positive response from the community, nor the unfortunate roadblocks we've encountered. I found myself on a few occasions apologizing for what I consider a mess that I've made. Sour meetings, bad emails, negative discussions. Not what I had planned. It didn't have to be like this. Please allow yourself the opportunity to get away from the kind of decision your opponents think you will make. This was never about Eric or Sing Sing Kill Brewery. It It wasn't and shouldn't be about a long-standing rift between yourselves and the and the mayor. This isn't about turning a profit or trying to get over. I'll have my own out-of-pocket expenses that I'll encounter, may not recover, and yet I'll pay graciously. This was about community and a good way to make it brighter and tighter. We couldn't ask for a better time to do so. Eric simply listened to what he thought was a great idea and immediately took a lead role.
Mr. Turco, thank you very much. I'm sorry you have to turn in your, if you have written remarks, please share them with the clerk and we'll get them.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christina Picciano, Eastern Avenue. I'm here to show my support and stand in solidarity with the local businesses involved in the proposed Big Oss barbecue at Henry Gourdine Park. I was born and raised here in Ossining, and this would be unlike any other community event we've seen before at a village park. As someone familiar with organizing live music events for over 15 years, I can safely say that this will take a village to organize and fund. Which is why I'm also here to show my concern and disappointment at Trustee Herrera and Trustee Bazemore for not only hindering and blocking this event from going forward, but your repeated actions against Sing Sing Hill Brewery. This isn't new. I have never in my life seen so much venom and hatred spewed from a politician towards a locally owned business that brews and sells beer and hosts live music. You must really hate beer. You've allowed your own personal vendettas and emotions to get the best of you, with the community at a loss. Your vote at last week's work session, or lack thereof, was arbitrary and capricious. It was based solely on your disdain for Sing Sing Hill Brewery and Mayor Garrity. In the winter, your supporters started an online campaign targeting the local music events at Sing Sing Hill Brewery. They commented that the brew pub was part of the displacement process of tenants. This is beyond false and slanderous. Throughout the year, many of your supporters have publicly called to boycott Sing Sing Hill Brewery. Last month, my band performed there for an event that was free and open to the public, showcasing 2 female songwriters and 2 local food trucks. Most municipalities would be thrilled that this event exists in our village, yet you chose to go out of your way at the following legislative session to openly target the brewery and the 2 food trucks, falsely suggesting that they were without permits. At last week's work session, you both spent an hour and a half of taxpayers' time to spin an elaborate and disjointed web of reasons to block the brewery from obtaining a permit for the Big Oss barbecue. Instead of being a present participant, you texted each other the entire time. You ignored local business owners and you wasted our time. I'm a queer woman who plays punk rock. There are very few places that host original music here in Ossining. And there are 0 LGBTQ bars in Westchester. When you are a queer performer, the line goes cold after Pride. Sing Sing Hill Brewery, however, is one of the few spaces that hosts queer performers and original music year-round. They have embraced my community more than any other local establishment here in the county. Your public hatred and harassment towards a queer, artist-friendly establishment begs the question, what do you think about the people they cater to? What do you think about me? Based off your actions of the past year, I personally would never come forward to you for anything related to local music, business, or the LGBTQ community. I urge you to reflect on your intentions when voting. Ask yourself, who is this serving? Your own personal anger, your inner saboteur, or local businesses and artists coming together highlighting what makes Ossining so special? I stand behind local businesses and the fantastic people in this community that are making changes. I hope you will too.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board. Aaron Spring. Just want to say I speak as an individual. I don't represent the Ossining School Board or the views or the opinions of the Ossining School Board in any way. Don't have anything prepared. I'm just going to go on for a couple minutes. I've shouted out over 50 small businesses in this community every Saturday. I do a small business Saturday shout out. That's because I believe in small business. I run my own small business. I run a process serving company. And I understand how hard it is, how much work you have to put in. It's not easy. And I have a lot of respect for anybody who runs a small business. This fee and these fees that are being incurred during this expenditure I see it as a tax and I see it as a regulation. And in my humble opinion, businesses thrive, especially small businesses thrive, when there's tax cuts and when there's deregulation. So for you to put these fees on, it makes it harder and it takes money away from these small businesses owned by local people to do the right thing for the community. This event would bring tons of people together. These small businesses employ people who live within this community, whose kids attend schools in this community, who spend money in this community. I don't want to see $250 go to the government. I'd rather see $250 go back to the business owner so they can buy their kid a new bike, so they can invest in a Little League baseball team, so they can, do whatever they need to do to take care of their workers. Again, this is just a tax to me, and I personally believe that you should waive these fees so we can bring the community together in a more affordable way and offer the businesses the best possible solution to allow this to happen. Some people might not be able to make it because they're barely making the margins as is. So the less expensive it is for these businesses to be involved and come into this event and be part of this event, the better it is for the community. People might not agree with my stances on taxes, but that's my personal belief, and I encourage you to please listen to the public here and vote for Resolution D. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron.
Ann Carpenter, Village of Ossining. I will be reading a letter on behalf of Lex and Gladys Taylor of Lex Taylor Barbecue. Dear Ossining community members, I remember when we first visited Ossining 3 years ago. It shattered our preconceptions of Westchester as a waspy and entitled suburban enclave. The richness and culture and diversity we encountered reminded us of when we moved to Williamsburg, Brooklyn 20 years ago. No small feat for a small and sleepy river town. We couldn't help but see the parallels in Ossining that made Williamsburg explode into the most desirable neighborhood in the United States. It's not just in its proximity to New York City, its beautiful parks along the Hudson River, but in its incredibly diverse community. A community that consists of the haves, the have-not-so-muches, blue-collar, white-collar, Republican, and Democrat. A true representation of America. We have farmers, lawyers, chefs, bakers, brewers, artists, dancers, naturalists, musicians, activists, and business owners of every kind. My wife Gladys and I knew immediately that this was a truly special place, a safe place where everyone was welcome and all outlooks embraced, the perfect place to raise kids and start businesses. And in the last 3 years, we have realized that just like Williamsburg 20 years ago, Ossining was brimming with eager and talented like-minded people who all saw the huge potential of this small place. In just the last 3 years, we have seen an exciting trend. Businesses that believe that the key to success is to invest in local talent and resources, practice sustainable methods, and produce the highest quality of goods and services. And just as our businesses have invested in our town, so too must our town invest in our businesses. By encouraging new ideas, embracing new initiatives, and supporting village businesses with the available resources. Warmly, Lex and Gladys Taylor, Lex Taylor Barbecue.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter.
Thank you.
Scott Carpenter, Prospect Avenue, Ossining. Ms. Mayor, members of the Village Board, I've been an Ossining resident for 16 years, and I have to say Big Oss Barbecue is an ideal event for Ossining. The board should vote to approve this event and make it as easy as possible for businesses to participate. This might mean waiving fees, mobilizing other sectors of village government for logistics, and co-sponsoring it for promotion purposes. This event will help get the word out about the growing food and drink community in small businesses in Ossining. The physical layout of Ossining can sometimes stop us from experiencing everything that is here, between parking, Highland Avenue, kind of bisecting the village. It's not as natural to walk from one place to the other as it might be in some other places. The idea of this barbecue brings together all the food and drink establishments rooted in Ossining all in one place. This event makes good use of the waterfront park. It is, in fact, an ideal location that is already in place, and it requires no streets to be blocked off. Again, that's also good for businesses who may not even be participating in the event. This event showcases the diversity and the vibrancy of Ossining. By my count, Participants include representatives from cuisines and communities, Peruvian, Turkish, Jamaican, vegan, if that counts as a community, and others that I'm probably missing. That broad array of participants shines a positive light on Ossining. It's something that the village board should want to get behind and not impede in any way. The spirit of Ossining is also a spirit of community, and that is the brewer spirit as well. Collaboration is key in the brewing community. I say this out of experience from visiting a lot of breweries. Sing Sing Kill Brewery is leading the way in this effort because it's in their DNA. They've already successfully held events based on this community collaboration. Craven Jamaican Brunch, Good Choice Kitchen Brunch, other local food vendors, African dance lessons, local artist showcases, fundraisers for Little Leagues, gatherings of ukulele aficionados, to say nothing of the array of musicians, some of whom you've heard from already tonight, who've been given a new platform in our community. The fact that Sing Sing Kill Brewery is taking the lead is a natural fit for them. Sure, it enhances their brand, but their brand is about collaboration, and it's also a tremendous burden. Putting on these events is not easy. Big House Barbecue will be the same. It won't be easy. But the village board can make it easier for them and for all of the other participants. Cesar Chavez once said, if you really want to make a friend, go to someone's house and eat with them. The people who give you their food will give you their heart. Yes, vendors at Big House Barbecue will charge money for their food, but they should not have to pay extra fees to take part. The same spirit of community and friendship will run through the event. Food and drink have a way of bringing people together. People will get to know each other in new ways. Members of the village board, Ms. Mayor, please show Ossining and all of Westchester the open hand of friendship extended to the community. By doing everything possible to make this event successful for all the participants, Ossining will show too that it has a heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Everybody, Rodolfo Moran, a resident and a member of the DRCW, the Downtown Redevelopment Working Committee, which met 2 summers ago, and we came up with the conclusion that one really good way of revitalizing our community was to create progress, not stand in the way of it. And one way to really do that is to use our beautiful waterfront, which a lot of people thought was the most beautiful waterfront in all of Westchester. And a good way of doing that was with big events. I think people even talked about, bringing in the ship and doing some kind of event like that, which seemed a little crazy at the time. So let's start in a smaller scale with something like this. And everybody agreed, and everybody loved the idea, and it was in the report. And I really believed to the fact that when it was in the report, that means that we were going to try to do it, and we weren't going to stand in the way of it. Like, I think people might be trying to stand in the way by requesting $250 fees, which might not seem like a lot of money, but when you're trying to really create something, it can be. And when it is to a small business, it can be. Also, as part of this committee, one thing that I got to do is I got to sit down and have really interesting conversations with all of you guys. And one thing that I found interesting was what a great group of people it was, and how much everybody cared about diversity, how much everybody cared about me being someone that I felt, was brown and probably struggling in this community like many other people are. And I found it interesting that everybody cared so much about me, and everybody cared so much about the fact that we want to stop and want to create this great community where we don't have to worry about lack of diversity and where we don't have to worry about gentrification. And I think that this kind of event, and I think organizations working together, businesses working together, is a great way to stop that. It's a great way to stop that because we are talking about diversity. We have different people here working together. Because right now we don't really have diversity. Everybody talks about Ossining being the most diverse town. And honestly, yes, we have lots of different people from all different ways of walks of life. But you still see them in different parts doing different things, talking different languages, doing different things. That's not real diversity. So if we want to create the real diversity that we're always advocating for, let's create events like this where we're going to be able to do it. And then let's really think about who our enemies should be, because I think that right now we're not doing it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moran.
Jerry Smith. I didn't come in with a prepared speech. Come in here representing anybody except Jerry Smith as a 40-year, 50-year resident of Ossining. I'm coming for one reason. I came in, it would speak on something else, but when I hear the conversation, especially about your board members from people in the audience, who I think was repulsive. If you don't like someone, you say it in a way, but a respectful way. Each one of the board members are supposed to be independent. They're not supposed to rubber stamp anybody's program if they don't like it. And if you don't like that, you just have to walk out here with the same thing we do. I agree that we need these events that's being mentioned today, but I don't believe anybody should be waived the fees. Because when my kid go to the swimming pool, they don't waive the fees. When we go rent a park, they don't waive the fees. It's a separation between private business and the board. If the board wants to support it, they can co-sponsor it and they can give money. But I think if it's a fee or anything applied to the use of our property, it can't be waived for certain organizations. I just don't believe that. Diversity is important, and when you're talking about feeling like we don't feel the diversity or justifications, I'm a person that lived here and know there's a possibility exists. And what they are presenting probably helps us to get there. But we can't get there if we says, okay, we're going to give you something because you're helping us, but the people who can't afford it got to pay the fees. If the fees are there, the fees are there. If you want to waive the fees, that's waive all of them. And I think when we get to there, when we get to the point where ordinary citizens feel like they can come up and don't have to feel like they're being rejected because they give their views about changes that's coming, then we're not going to get there. So I hope the board would take in consideration what I'm saying. I agree with the barbecue. I agree with everything that we're doing. I think that everybody's subject to the same fees for use of the village property.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Good evening, Board. My name is Ben Zebelman. I'm an Ossining Village resident. I'm here to speak about Resolution D. Last week, there seemed to be quite a bit of confusion over the voting on the resolution for the Great Oss Barbecue, which has now been moved to this evening. And all of this confusion is very concerning. I watched the meeting from home with my family on TV, and as a person who runs their own business for 20 years now, as long as I've lived here in Ossining, if a prospective investor, a business investor, was viewing last week's work session meeting, any interest that they would have had in Ossining, I feel pretty confident that it would probably be gone by now. Why would they spend any more time and money considering Ossining when a simple community get-together is questioned around and around to no end? Trustees Levin, Casada, and Mayor Garrity clearly indicated support for the Great Oss Barbecue. But then, over 1.5 hours were spent discussing how Trustees Herrera and Trustee Bazemore are in support of small business in Ossining, but your actions did not indicate that. A simple vote that could have been taken last week will now take place a little bit later tonight, and in case there was any confusion amongst you, and clearly there was confusion, hopefully in this past week you've been able to gather your thoughts together and are ready to vote in the only way that is indicative of being 100% in support of small businesses in Ossining. As I said before, my family has lived here for 20 years. I've had extended family that's lived here for over 100 years. My kids go to school here, and soon they will graduate. And in that time, there has never, to my knowledge, been a village-based food and beverage festival like the Great Oss Barbecue proposes to be. We need this. Ossining needs this event on October 19th. Please don't stand in the way of this great event from happening. As a community, we collectively mention how we have to go to Terrytown and Irvington and Pleasantville and Armonk and now even Peekskill to have fun. Well, here's an opportunity for the whole community to come together and have great food and beverage and fun down at our fantastic village waterfront at Henry Gourdine Park. Let's do this. Let's have a yes vote tonight and move this great event and others that come after it forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Representing the vegan community.
Good evening, members of the board, mayor. On August 13th, I was not in town, so I wrote an email to the Board of Trustees, and I believe the mayor was on it as well, in support of this event. So I'd first like to know if you received it.
Did, yes, thank you.
Okay. So I'm not going to go through that. I think we're all, well, it seems to be in the beginning of, so I did watch the video of last week. And it seemed like in the beginning, everyone was on board and very interested in this. And as we're saying here, it kind of went awry somewhere. It was very enlightening for me. So I apologize, I don't think I introduced myself. Lori Gershgorn, owner, Good Choice Kitchen, 147 Main Street. I am not a town of Ossining or a village resident. All my employees are residents of Ossining, actually the village as well. And I chose Ossining for many reasons. Many people here have already asked me why, and you've heard the story. It was a large eye-opener for me to observe as a business owner, as someone who's invested in Main Street, as someone who is looking to continue to be here and be involved in all these discussions, whether it's how we collaborate as small businesses and grow Ossining, or with what's right for our residents and people who play, work, live here. So I know that the resolution, I don't want to get off course because I know the resolution is what I'm supposed to address, and that is the approval of the event. But I also want to take the time to say that there's also a big picture here. It's not just about the October 19th event. It's about where we're going and the support that the village government shows to do that. I sat there watching that video and I was thinking, what if I wanted to put on an event? Is this what I'm going to have to go through? I've heard other people trying to do events and it going away for some reasons. I never understood why. I didn't get into the politics. I don't get into the politics. So I do urge you, as was suggested by I believe, firstly, Trustee Levin, that a comprehensive plan with rates and protocol for all applications of all events must be done and addressed. I also made myself think, you know, other events that happen on a weekly basis that have been brought up here previous in the meeting, for instance, at Village Square. What's the protocol there? It needs to be even, it needs to be equal, it needs to be fair. But I can't imagine something like this being not only approved, the Resolution D, but also thwarted, like I mentioned in the August 13th, before I even saw the video, I addressed that. Now, the people behind me that just spoke, I am in agreement with. Their delivery is professional, heartfelt, and I am proud to be part of this community, and I just hope that you objectively analyze the pros and cons, and I don't really see any cons directly, and really come to terms with what your job is, and focus on not only the small picture but also the big picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gershgorn.
Thank you.
Good evening. Susie Ross, Ossining Village resident, cheerleader of our local economy, I suppose, and chair of Green Ossining. Several months ago, I was approached by Elmer of Brothers Fish and Chips to see if I could help plan a food-based event centering around paella contests. So I was surprised and pleased to see that a variety of other interests with food themes had merged into what is now known as the Big Oss Barbecue. Pleased mostly because it's evident that our food and beverage establishments have no problem working together for the betterment of our community. Green Ossining was asked to lead in zero waste efforts, and at first I had concerns because zero waste is not just about how we dispose of waste, it's also about the vendors going to the added expense of purchasing compostable products to serve on and to eat and drink with. And this is an educational process that takes time. We've experienced it through the Earth Day Festival. But we agreed to manage as lead of zero waste, and the Scouts are actually interested in managing the zero waste tents as they have for the Earth Day Festival. But I'm not only standing here tonight as a show of support for this event. I'm also here in support of an initiative whose only objective is to put a spotlight on our local economy and to help it grow. And from a Green Ossining perspective, the very root of a sustainable community is a thriving local economy. So here's what I propose for your consideration. Since there is no precedent for an event like this anywhere in the village, let alone Gourdine Park, where we actually celebrate the food and beverage establishments, I feel you should consider this as a proof of concept. See how it goes and learn from it. Encourage the creativity and the desire to bring attention to our local food and beverage establishments, and applaud Sing Sing Kill Brewery for taking the lead in organizing an event that is truly by and for Ossining. As an event planner for the Earth Day Festival, I know this is no small undertaking, and it is no small expense. With that, I feel the village should sponsor this event, and in so doing, waive all fees associated with it by fully supporting this endeavor. This will reduce the financial burden on all vendors participating and allow their hard-earned dollars to offset the costs of other event expenses that they will each be assuming. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rose.
Good evening. My name is Jerlyn Lopez, and I came from Peekskill. We came 7 years ago, and we've been supporting the village and the town of Ossining in whatever way we can. Certainly, we've been interested in the economic and social development of Ossining, and as such, I am in support of Resolution D. One of the things that I absolutely have seen living in Peekskill was the support of the trustees and the local leaders in the economy, and obviously supporting local businesses. That is something that I would like to see here, and certainly helping our local businesses is not just a matter of saying it, but also doing it. As such, I would recommend that also the fees would be waived for them, because that's what would be appropriate in terms of not just saying that we support local businesses, but actually doing something to demonstrate to them, and especially for such an event, which I'm very interested in, and obviously there's a good group of us citizens here who enjoy and love seeing people from our town wanting to create things that will draw a spotlight on the great things that we do here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez.
Hi there. Stephen Collins, town of Ossining. My wife and I, 2 years ago, after living in New York City for about 10 years, decided to buy a house. And two of the main reasons we chose Ossining was a couple of businesses that are represented here tonight. And we're totally happy to be here. We love it the last 2 years. When we got here, the one thing that was missing was a bar, live music, and open mic, community outreach. I've been sober for like 7 years, so the beer means nothing to me. But the community outreach that Sing Sing Kill Brewery is bringing to Ossining is raising our level of love for Ossining. So I support Sing Sing Kill Brewery. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Hi, good evening.
Peter Murdoch with Craven Jamaican Cuisine. I didn't watch what happened on television last week. I was actually front and center. I had front seat to what went on, and I was at work and my wife called me and she asked me, what did I do last night? Because there seemed to be a disruption on Facebook and people are talking, and I couldn't believe it was the same meeting that I was at, that people were saying these things about. I would like to clear it up to begin with. Now, big picture, there is some tension. This is my second meeting here, and I could sense there's tension amongst the board. And my wish is that it will cease. On the meeting last week, I didn't see both trustees, Quantel and Omar. I think they were asking questions, and I'm hoping that a lot of it was answered. I never like what I saw on Facebook because it really never represented what really went on. And that's the honest truth. They were asking questions. We were able to answer their questions, but I didn't see them as being obstructive. I see them as just asking questions to get clarity. I'm hoping since last week to this point, some comprehensive plan was, I guess the team or the group here came up with a comprehensive plan to say what would be charged, how much it would be, and it would be a standard for everyone. Was that done?
That would be an operational thing, and it would not be able to be done in 1 week. I don't believe that there is.
Okay.
And right now, there's I don't believe that there's even been a clear understanding of exactly what the history of application of fees has been.
I think we kind of brought that up last week, that there wasn't a clear understanding of really what was needed. And I think that's where most of the questions were. What is it that's asked now? How much are you asking for the event? Because I'm sure everyone here wants the event. Am I right? We're all in support of the event. And I don't think any one of you on the board is against small businesses. That being said, how much are we asking to sponsor the event? What's the total cost?
So for each vendor, they would be required to pay $25.
Okay.
For the beer, it's a $250 fee.
Okay.
And I believe that it was stated last week that the tent fee is $75.
Okay. All right. So you see what we're spending so much time talking about? $400 or $500.
I think it's about 825.
All right, 800, and I did that math. 825 divided by 30 is $33. If each person come up with $33, the argument is over.
Yeah.
I rest my case.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Kelly Cassidy, Village of Ossining resident. A year ago, I started my last year of undergrad at Purchase College, and in the fall, I found a job bartending at Sing Sing Kill Brewery. I drove in and out of Ossining to go to work, and originally it was just a weekend gig for some extra cash. After the new year, I began to fill a new role as the events and outreach coordinator. We started programming in a big way, filling the calendar with live music, art installations, special holiday events, fundraisers, dance and exercise classes, amongst other collaborations with local groups and businesses. In short, events that bring the community together. As the point of contact for events, I have the privilege of building relationships with members of this community who have made me feel like I belong here with them. It has been a very positive experience, and in the spring, I made Ossining my new home. Moving forward, the Big Oss Barbecue was born, and we were asked to help organize it. Part of my role was to go business to rally support. It was remarkable meeting the restaurant owners and hearing about their own ideas for the event. The Big Oss Barbecue is clearly something that has caught the attention of different levels of the community, and the incredible potential for this event has been recognized and raved about since its debut into our imaginations. I'm a newcomer, still learning about what Ossining has to offer. This planning process has continued to assure me that I've chosen the right place to be. Ossining is a support system and the home of quality food establishments. And just having been into the spaces and having the chance to meet the staff and take a look at the menus, I am inspired newly to patronize these places. I believe that the Big Ass Barbecue is an opportunity for others to also experience this, where their introduction to amazing restaurants can take place and inspire them to open their eyes to places they might have overlooked or never heard about before. However, something doesn't make sense to me. The Big Ass Barbecue is such a beautiful concept. It's an event that will bring everyone together to celebrate all that Ossining has to offer, while also presenting a great potential of long-term benefits for the businesses here. It's all for the sake of a shared vision of succeeding as a community and being recognized for what we have. But I'm not so sure that the village shares that vision. If they did, there certainly would be no delay in official approval, and we would not be here for a second time asking for what we're asking for. Last week's meeting sent the message that waiving the village fees associated with planning an event like this is out of the question, but I don't get it. We learned that village fees are routinely waived for community events. So why is this one different? It is frustrating to be involved in planning this new event when it appears that the village is particularly interested in treating it differently than others. This event that aims to strengthen our community and its economic development, why is it being treated differently than others? Why has this event suddenly inspired the village to draw a line between itself and the businesses of Ossining? Tonight we've come with some asks for the village. Please pass Resolution D, and please waive the fees associated with planning the Big Ass Barbecue. Doing so would ensure the highest level of success of the event and would demonstrate that the businesses of Ossining are in the village's best interest. Thank you.
Ms. Cassidy.
Hello, I'm Laura Whitlinger, 207 Cedar Lane, Ossining, New York. We have heard a lot of solid arguments tonight. The board will be hard-pressed to come up with a valid reason for denying this event or for refusing to waive the permit fees. But that doesn't mean that two of you won't find an excuse. Trustee Herrera, when I first met you, I was so impressed with your ambition and your desire to serve your community. You struck me as a dedicated, driven young man who could bring the diverse cultures of Ossining together, and an event like this is a perfect place to do it. When you began your campaign for mayor, I watched closely and I noticed a lot of missteps and divisive language coming from you in your campaign. But I was willing to give you the benefit of the doubt because you are young and inexperienced. After the election, when Mayor Garrity beat you by 70 points and won every district, including yours, I believed you would sit back on your heels and realize that your behaviors and toxic rhetoric were not serving you or our community. It wasn't serving us well at all. I believed you would change because I wanted it for you. At one time, I thought you were going to be a rising star in the Democratic Party. I may not agree with your methods, but I did agree with your goal of securing more affordable housing in Ossining. I also respected your efforts to shake up the status quo. I really liked that about you. After you lost the election, I hoped you would find a new voice and a new approach. When I saw the board meeting from August 7th and the working session from last week, I was disheartened. What I witnessed, and what the village of Ossining witnessed, was a young man who was so hurt and wounded from his profound losses that he has become petty, mean-spirited, and vindictive. The citizens of this village have watched you and Trustee Bazemore try time and time again to accuse Mayor Garrity of unethical behaviors, of favoritism, of scheming to help her husband's business profit in some way. So I want to tell you a story about the mayor's integrity. Last summer, when you two were campaigning against one another, someone from outside of Ossining approached Garrity's campaign with a comprehensive dossier on you. And Mayor Garrity said, absolutely not. She wouldn't use it, she wouldn't share it, and she forbid members of her campaign staff from doing so as well. She wanted to stick to the issues and let Ossining people decide who should govern based on current issues and not past mistakes. She could have ruined your career, your future as a public servant, your reputation in town, but it was beneath her. Make no doubt about it, she's stubborn, and she can be hard to work with because of that. But it's lucky for you that she is stubborn, especially when it comes to her principles, because that is what integrity looks like. If you and Trustee Bazemore vote to obfuscate the event in any way, your decision will not be based on policy or procedure. It will be based on pettiness. Your vote will be arbitrary and capricious. Your vote will not be related to the facts of the case that you've heard here tonight, and your adverse determination will not harm your intended victim, Mayor Garrity, the woman who humiliated you in the election. Rather, your decision will harm the small businesses you promised to promote when you were campaigning last fall. I'm not going to stay for your vote. I can't sit here and listen to you twist in the wind trying to justify it. I'm going to go across the street and have a beer at a local business, and then I'm going to go pick up some dinner at a local business. And when I'm going to pray that whatever wounds have caused such suffering in your heart can heal in time to save you, and you can do the right thing and vote yes for the businesses of Ossining. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Whitlayer. Anyone else like to comment this evening?
Matt Curtin, Stone Ave. I wear many hats in my daily life. Devoted husband, dad to a 10-year-old that's attended Ossining schools for his whole life. I'm a village homeowner and taxpayer who's lived in the village of Ossining for 12 years, and now co-owner and head brewer and job creator in a business in my own hometown. I have a great deal of pride in what we've been able to accomplish with our team in Sing Sing Kill Brewery over this last year. According to the Economic Impact Study of 2018, New York's 434 breweries have generated $3.5 billion in direct economic impact through beer production, sales, and the operation of brewery tap rooms. With so many breweries, the incredible part is that the spirit of collaboration is thriving with craft beer. Breweries regularly invite each other to brew in their spaces. Food vendors are regularly invited to serve food in their tap rooms. We provide menus for dozens of local restaurants for our customers to bring food into our space, something both our customers and local restaurants greatly enjoy. The Big Oss Barbecue will be an extension of this collaboration. We will bring people to directly to these local restaurants from businesses that will see economic growth and improve their customer base. I can't begin to count the number of personal recommendations that I have given in the tap room for local restaurants. People are overwhelmed by the diversity and selection that Ossining provides. This event will be an easy way for people to sample food from a number of different restaurants and enjoy a level of diversity that's not seen in our surrounding communities. We've poured beer in 4 different communities across the state in the same manner that we would like to do in at the Big Oss Barbecue. None of those communities have asked for participation fees that our hometown is asking for us. It's greatly surprising to me that the very people who should be supporting our small business are seemingly making it more difficult for us, and it should be mentioned that these fees are regularly waived. Breweries have been the catalyst for rebirth in downtowns and transition all across this state. The taproom model that we pursue is the fastest growing sector in craft beer. People love to socialize and enjoy beer in a brewery taproom and be able to talk to people who are actually involved in the production of their beer. We are not a faceless entity on a shelf. We are not faceless tap handles in a bar. We are not squirreled away in a nondescript industrial park. My partners and I wanted to locate our business in the heart of our village because we love it, and we wanted our neighbors to have a place to go to enjoy locally produced beer without having to drive to other communities to do so. As a New York farm brewery, we showcase New York grown grains and hops and give New York farmers and maltsters much needed economic growth for their businesses. The opportunity to give back to our community through the Big Oss Barbecue is one that we wholeheartedly believe will make a lasting impact. I'd like to thank all who have come out here tonight that are giving their input into this process. Time is a commodity that none of us can afford to waste, and it means a lot to us that you've taken your time to support this new creative and collaborative event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curtin.
I'm a resident of Ossining, Anicia Lugo. I came from Peekskill. I'm here tonight not for or against any political thing, you know. We need to come together as a community because we come from different cultures, different backgrounds, different ethnicities. Whether or not you want to waive whatever, okay, that's on your discretion, okay? We just need to come together as a community. We have different nationalities, backgrounds, cultures. Together. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Good night. I'm tired. Been up since 5:30 this morning. I'm bringing my kid to college tomorrow. My name is Luis, owner of First Village Coffee, so I'm kind of mumbling. Honored to be here tonight. Thank you for all you guys to be here tonight too. You know, we talk about community. I think this Big Oss Barbecue, I really like the name of it, will be pretty fun, and I'm ready for it. So let's vote. Let's go home, whether we have to pay this fee or not. I have to wake up at 6:30 tomorrow. I'm honored to be asked to participate on this barbecue. Eric, you guys, good job. And we're celebrating 3 years on the 26th of September.
Congratulations.
Of serving coffee, and we want to celebrate it probably, and you know, I'm ready to celebrate it in October 19th. So I want to see everyone in there. And thank you for being here tonight. So, thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Luis.
Thank you, Mr. Carino.
Luis, where's he going to college? Oh, BU? Congratulations.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak this evening?
Hello, my name is Diana Lopez. Not a very good public speaker, but that speaks to the fact that I'm here because I felt like my voice needed to be heard. I'm here as a parent. I got very excited when I heard about this whole event because I feel like my kids don't have access to a lot of fun events. And this clearly shows diversity to me, and that's how I saw it. Shops that, you know, food. And I really got excited about the whole idea of having all the different diverse shops that I go to eat all the time to participate in one big event. I like the idea of having people from other places to come here as tourists and enjoy and showcase Ossining, show who we are and what we're all about. So as a parent, I just wanted to say that I'm in support of what this event entails for my family, for my kids, and for who we are. So aside from the whole political aspect of it, I was shocked and I was very disappointed after watching the video from the last meeting because I couldn't quite understand why we were not in agreement, especially because waiving the fee is something that has been done. So again, I ask you to consider creating this kind of events for my family and everybody's family. And just like a lot of people voiced today, it's about being together. It's about collaborating, becoming prosperous together because we're all here doing it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak about the resolutions this evening?
Good evening, Mayor, board members. My name is Alex Jeffrey. I'm a member of Sing Sing Kill Brewery, LLC. And I guess it looks like I'm kind of the closer for this evening. And I'd like to take a little bit of a different approach. I think what this application, this dispute over fees, has really illuminated is a tremendous opportunity for the board. You have a lot of new local businesses that are doing a lot of very exciting things. It's difficult for them to survive. In an event like this, or any other kind of event where they have to go out to the public, they are already faced with numerous fees with the county, with the state, those types of things. I think you have an opportunity to really speak for your local businesses. So consider this. For an Ossining business promoting an Ossining event, waive your fees for the first year. If the event's a success, implement the fees as it's going forward. Consider the optics. What that does not only to the residents, to local businesses, but to outside investors, outside businesses. Ossining doesn't just say they support local business, they actually do it. And we've heard talk about, the fees, just, implement them, they exist. You guys, I watched the meeting last week. All of you in your different ways were wrestling with the fact that there is no real consistency. There's no real pattern. Fees have been waived in the past for certain types of businesses. Fees have been implemented for others. There hasn't been any consistent policy. This presents you with an opportunity to say here tonight, as an Ossining business that's promoting an Ossining event with other Ossining businesses, we're going to take a stand right now and we're going to say that tonight, in connection with this event, this business, we're going to waive the fees for a year. This business and this event explodes and takes, moves on, then maybe, we'll implement the fees going forward. But we're going to let this new business, this new event, we're going to let them get started. They're already paying fees to the county, to the state. We're not going to pile on for the first year. Let them do it. I think that there's an adage that, actions speak louder than words. I think this is a great opportunity for you to act, and we all invite you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on Village Board resolutions? Right. We want to discuss item topics. I think we can do it at the time that comes up, unless staff feels compelled to interject at this time. Okay, we'll discuss it when the item comes up. All right, Madam Clerk.
Approval of minutes August 7th, 2019. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of August 7th, 2019's regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Approval of minutes August 14th, 2019. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the August 14th, 2019 special session as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Abstain.
Aye.
Abstain.
Approval of voucher detail August 21, 2019. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated August 21st, 2019 in the amount of $395,700.92. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolution authorizing the issuance of a special permit to Sing Sing Brewery, LLC, to sell alcoholic beverages in Henry Gourdine Park on October 19th, 2019, and further authorizing the appropriate village official to sign the New York State Liquor Authority Special Event Permit Application Landlord Authorization Form. Whereas Sing Sing Brewery, LLC, SSKB, pertinent to the Village of Ossining Code Section 190-4B, submitted a written application to the village clerk with the filing fee requested a special permit to sell alcoholic beverages at Henry Gourdine Park on October 19th, 2019, between 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. as part of the Big Oz Barbecue event. And whereas the Village of Ossining, as owner of the property where Henry Gourdine Park is located, also has been requested by SSKB to sign the New York State Liquor Authority Special Event Permit Application Landlord Authorization Form. And whereas, as the Board of Trustees August 14th, 2019 work session, the board received a presentation from representatives of SSKB
about the proposed Big Us Barbecue event. The request for a special permit and a request that the $250 filing fee, 1-day vendor fee, and tent fee be waived. And whereas following SSKB's presentation, the Board of Trustees did not approve a resolution granting the requested special permit, Mayor Garrity having recused herself. And whereas at the Board of Trustees August 21st, 2019 regular session, the board again discussed the special permit request and the fee waiver request. Now therefore be it resolved that the application by Sing Sing Kill Brewery LLC for a special permit to sell alcoholic beverages at Henry Gourdine Park on October 19th, 2019 from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. as part of the Big Us Barbecue event is granted. And it is further resolved that the filing fee of $250 is waived and that the village clerk is directed to refund the filing fee to SSKB. And be it further resolved that SSKB will comply with all applicable provisions of the Village Code, including but not limited to Section 190-3B, relating to SSKB's obligation to indemnify and hold the village harmless against any and all claims, damages, losses, and expenses resulting from the Big Us Barbecue event, and to provide appropriate insurance coverage, naming the Village of Ossining as an additional insured. And it is further resolved that the appropriate village official is authorized to sign the New York State Liquor Authority Special Event Permit Application Landlord Authorization Form for SSKB. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, so now's our opportunity to discuss this agenda item.
Shall I go first, since I was one of the trustees to table it till today? So before I comment on the particular public comments, I kind of want to stick on to the agenda item and task at hand. So last week, as I mentioned, I was in support of approving the event if the complete fee was paid, which has now been paid, which is great, and if they paid all other applicable fees, and then I would see no reason for the event to be stopped or hindered or altered in any way. Then I read this resolution, which is basically waiving it, so we would have to refund the money, and also we never finished the conversation as to whether or not we would waive or charge the other fees. Peter, I'm sorry to say, and the mayor's correct. I guess in the past week, a lot wasn't done to discuss how this would be addressed or what option A or B would. I'm assuming the manager just picked this resolution instead of the other one for us to discuss on record. So that's where I'm at. I came prepared to hear the public comment on the event, which we did. Acknowledge that the applicant, Sing Sing Kill Brewery, would pay their fee, which they did. Submit their application, which they did. Bring it for discussion for a vote, which they did. And now I have a resolution that says the complete opposite of us to refund their money and waive all their fees. So I'm a little confused. I wasn't going to go into the politics, and Peter, I appreciated you. I got a lot of phone calls about people who watched the meeting versus what they saw online and all the rhetoric and political, but I wanted to say it on record for when he does watch the meeting. So I appreciated that being brought up, but that's not really relevant. That's politics and, how the board currently is, unfortunately. But I want to stick at the task at hand. So I shared where we're at, where we were, and I don't really know. I actually want to ask our manager why this version of the resolution was put on the agenda instead of the other one, because we didn't discuss that at all as a board or with each other or through email or a phone call or anything, as a matter of fact, because the safe way would have been to just either leave it blank or whatever Corporation Counsel would have said, the board hasn't decided whether or not, cool, so, the applicant paid their fee, so that discussion's over. They paid their fee, they're complying, they're going to be at the park, cool. But we never had a discussion about all the other fees. So that was I don't know where that assumption or that part came into a resolution that wasn't discussed. So I guess we're doing that now.
Stuart, can you, I mean, my understanding is that you write the resolutions. Do you have an answer for Trustee Herrera?
I do, as I also explained to Trustee Herrera earlier
Yes,
today,
I called,
because
yes.
we did have a call.
Mhm.
This is the resolution that's in the agenda. There is another resolution which has been prepared, which does not waive the fees. And as this board has done on a number of occasions with the resolutions that are before you, at any point, if you wish to change the language of the resolution, you are free to do so.
I guess my point, this is not directed towards you, Corp Counsel at all, is who made the decision to place this particular resolution with this particular language, with this particular action, instead of the alternative?
I did, because we did discuss at the last meeting the fee, the specific fee for selling alcohol in the park, which has never been charged before, and that was the basis of the request. This was discussed by the applicant for the event. Again, there are alternatives to how you want to approve it, but I decided which resolution went in.
Thank you. So is this contingent on further, so you made a decision based off of the conversation we had last week, I follow, about the $250 fee. Got it. So what's missing here is the part of continued conversation about whether or not we're going to waive other fees.
What other fee? I don't see other fees in here.
No. I'm just asking, right? Because the whole discussion last week wasn't just about the $250 fee; it was about all fees. So
The only fee that is being waived in this resolution
Is
the
that one fee.
$250. The other fees are not waived.
yeah, I'm just discussing it because
No,
last
I'm
week,
I'm making that clear.
Okay.
The only fee waived is the $250. The vendor fee and the tent fee is not waived.
peddler's license. We still haven't got an answer on the park fee, what we charge the restaurant, a for-profit business for a wedding. We haven't gotten.
The wedding is part of the LATA, as I understand, so that's a completely separate agreement. It would not be applicable for a community event in a park. We don't have a park fee for Henry Gourdine Park.
Right, I'm aware we don't have a park fee, but the LATA I'm aware of as well, but that's a private business. This is a private business.
That would be a private business for a closed event, an event that they would be charging more money at, so it's really not an apples to apples comparison.
Okay, so then, I appreciate you answering the question at this meeting because that was not answered at the last meeting. So you're not suggesting that at this time, because it hasn't been done for that particular park, that we begin to charge for that park for events?
What I said at the last meeting, and I will say it again, and what I said in my presentation at the last meeting, we do not have a consistent way of doing events. We do not have consistent fees, and we have fees for park pavilions. We have different fees because we have mostly town parks where events are held, not village parks. So this is new territory. We're having more and more events. We are working right now on establishing a criteria for events based on several different objectives, making sure that we can support local businesses and the community as a whole, making sure that we support economic development and growth, but also making sure that depending on the nature of the event, the types of vendors at the event, that we also are protecting ourselves, keeping the community safe, making sure that the appropriate insurance is required, and when necessary and when deemed appropriate, recouping any costs for the event that are expended by staff to facilitate the event. So there will be discretion in that, and I think that we will definitely want to look at whether an event is an all Ossining-based event, an all community-based event, versus events where vendors are coming who are more typical vendors than bricks and mortar businesses who are deciding to sell their wares on a particular day. That said, we don't have that process in place, nor did we have enough time to put it in place to be codified in time for the events, not just this event, but other events that are pending for this event season.
Okay.
Stuart, can you please give me history of this particular fee?
Which
This $250 fee. How long has this been on the books?
That section of the code certainly precedes my time here, and that the 190 that's in 190. I think it was even here before my predecessor was here.
Okay. And so this is the first time, because I think it was discussed last week that this
As
is
far
the
as I know,
first,
this is
the
the
first
first
time that the
time.
village has actually.
Because I think, as far as I know, it's the first time, yes, in terms of someone with the sale of alcohol at a village park. That's that's the reason for the 250 fee. We
Gotcha.
don't have it otherwise. So, but I am unaware of any circumstance where that application has been made before towards this.
Because Henry Gourdine Park is fairly new. I mean, there's
new.
been a couple of events there, but not, I can't recall of a time of anybody selling alcohol.
I think that's correct.
Okay.
This isn't just selling alcohol, this is serving alcohol.
Sell, gift, or consume is
Okay.
what the statute says.
Can I ask? I'm
Sure.
not-
No,
you
sure.
can take the microphone back.
Sure.
I have lots to comment on it, but I want to sort of cut to the chase. This is a legislative session. We're voting on this legislation. What do you want put in here or taken out so that you would vote to pass this legislation?
I will get to that when I finish my questions for Corp Counsel and our village manager, which will be shortly.
Okay.
So I want to know at what point, so we approved the event, they paid their fee. At what point, regardless of whether it's a new park or not, or it's a new practice or not, at what point do we determine, even if it's not applicable to them, I mean, we've made on-the-spot quotes for permits in the past in the village.
I would say that's probably part of the problem, because what we haven't done is a real cost analysis. We haven't put a rationale to it that's not necessarily arbitrary or specific to that particular event. So part of the challenge is in order to really have fees that are appropriate, we really need to understand exactly what we're charging people for and why we're charging for them. We don't have any of that in place. So I would not recommend continuing that practice.
Okay, so then the one-day peddler's license that's been paid by other nonprofits and groups in the past, how would we deal with this applicant that has an array of private businesses that would be required to get a peddler's license? And
I can't answer any of these questions because we don't have policies in place right
no,
now.
the peddler's license we have in place.
But what I'm saying, are you asking for going forward? Are you asking?
No. So this is actually one item that is in our code that has been past practice, that has not been legislated recently. There's a one-day peddler's license that would have to be applied. The process with the police department.
Giving it is at the board's discretion.
Okay, so I just wanted to make the public know that not every fee that we have is out of nowhere. Not every fee is all willy-nilly. There's been processes, despite our lack of procedure and process for events, there are still some areas that we actually do have some structure, and the main reason why I have challenged this particular asks of the fees to be waived is because we have charged and treated other applicants in Ossining differently in the past when it comes to fees, which is a form of discrimination, right? So, and that can be proved, whether it's a mainly nonprofit, actually, not even a for-profit business. That can be proven if I had to actually prove it on paper. So that is where this comes from. I know it's being turned into a political ploy, but I am someone who's trying to and has fought for, and I still am, equity amongst businesses and how they're treated and how they're enforced. And I want to make sure that if we want to have a conversation, which is very good, and I heard it from a lot of people today, that, you know what, the fees are not aligned with the values of the board at this time for reasons of economic development or for XYZ, then we would have to refund a lot of people in the past that have applied and paid for fees in the village the past, honestly, 5 to 10 years. And I could actually list who they are and what the fees are and what the amounts are. And then I could say, you know what, it's fair. We fixed it. A few businesses that are aligned identified a problem that they considered an impediment. We agreed with them. We're going to rectify it, not at their expense. We're going to approve their event, but we're also going to make right by those who were kind of, in a way, I don't want to use the word abused, but treated differently.
So you said you were going to answer the question at the end. Are you?
So yes, I will only be voting.
What is it that you want to change on here so that you would pass this so these folks can go and do their business?
I would like the resolution to say that this applicant will be responsible for paying all applicable fees, with the exception of the one that we now have a understanding of, which is the park fee. We don't have that. We can't prove why we would charge a fee. That's our fault. But I would like the resolution to approve the event if they pay the $250 fee, the peddler's licenses fees, and the building department fees.
So the other, so I just have a question, not the other fee. So there are three, right? There's a $250, not to be refundable, just the straight $250. Then there is is that all?
There's
in the works,
the peddler vendor permit fees, which are $25 per vendor.
But that wasn't even in here because they're going to pay that, correct?
They've been asking,
that wasn't discussed.
Tonight have been asked to waive all fees. So there are three sets of fees. So it's the $250 fee for the serving alcohol in a village park. It's the vendor permit, which is for the individual vendors. And then there is a completely separate building permit fee, which is required to set up a temporary structure, which in this case would be the tent, which meets the size requirements. That's a pretty universal building code requirement. And that fee is, I believe, $75.
Stuart, the vendor's fee, is that strictly for vendors that are vending on public property?
No, that's actually we have both itinerant vendors and we have vendors. I don't believe it is just for public property.
So if a church were holding an event and they had vendors that were selling,
Supposed to get a vendor's license.
And do they?
I'd have to check with the clerk's office. They don't come through my.
Well, no, we have 22 spiritual houses, so it's a lot of research.
All right, so I want to, while everybody's trying to figure that out, so just to understand the resolution is basically asking us, this resolution does not include the vendor's fees and all those kind of things like that. Typically speaking, and I'm just thinking about the experience at IFCA, when people want to hold events at parks, you have to pay like a deposit, and depending on the amount of people that you are having, right, you have to pay, a particular kind of fee. So, you and like the recreation can work that out. So for me, it is simple.
But I just want to caveat, it's not, I wish it was that simple. In town parks and parks where there are barbecue stations and pavilions, you can rent those stations. There are no parks where there's just a park fee. It's specific to
the grilling,
a pavilion or a state. And typically, we are talking. Typically, events that are held in town parks was completely separate jurisdiction. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, because this board would have no ability to legislate on what goes on in town parks. But that is because all the parks are in Ossining, and many of the town parks are in the village of Ossining. It becomes very confusing. But again, there's no park fee. It's specific to a pavilion, and in the case of Engle Park, the barbecue area.
So for me, to make this just cut clear and simple, this particular code has been in the books for clearly predates Stewart, predates Laura Lee. I see no reason why, I didn't put the fee there. This fee predates me, and so for me, it's following with the code. I appreciate the comments, and I think for those who want to come to Os Barbecue, the community is more than welcome. I will be there, but for me, the code has been in and on the books, and I see no reason why at this time that we should not just go along with the code that's already there. And so I want to just keep with the process. I don't want to debate what we did for this one that one. I asked last week, is there proof of who you waive fees from? Is there a history of this? I mean, to be quite clear, we can get up here in meetings and say, this one waived this, that one waived that, this one was charged that. I don't want to talk about that. I just want to keep it real simple and charge the $250, and then we can proceed on with the meeting. That's me. I hope that answered.
So you want to change a paragraph of 250?
250 remains. We're not waiving.
Okay.
I would love for the applicant to, or any applicant going forward until, because we still don't have a plan as to how we're actually going to plan for the event procedure or process, which I guess we'll do later after this applicant. But I want the applicant to go home tonight and get a letter saying that their event was approved, not just the serving of beer, but their event was approved and their terms. I don't want them to assume whether or not we waived the peddler's fees or the building department fees, or I would just like it combined into one so we could move on, so they could start tomorrow if they wanted to PR and fundraise. I don't understand why we can't just finish this today and give them an actual event permit. We've issued under the manager's letterhead in the past when an applicant has come, mainly private entities doing events on public property that are open to the public, that just says, dear applicant, the Village Board of Trustees at the August 21st legislative meeting approved your application. We received a $250 application fee. We are awaiting a number of actual vendors that you're going to do, contingent upon the application per each peddler's license. You said you would have one tent that requires a permit. That's, I just want it all on one sheet so we could move on and they can move on. And that's about it.
I don't know.
Go ahead, please.
I think Benny wants to speak.
Thank you.
I'll speak after him.
Sure.
It's very interesting. I've been in very interesting discussions sitting in this chair for the past several years back, and I always learn something new. I always try to put everything on the table where, I like to do my homework before I try to make a decision. And there's been a couple meetings where I come in with a clear head and try to figure it out, sit down and listen to the public, listen to our community. This is definitely one of those meetings that is very interesting. I have a quick question. Maybe Aaron be able to answer that a little bit better than Stuart, maybe. If this event was to take place about maybe 100 feet from the park that they're proposing, what will be the sort of the process on the town level that they will have to
As far as I know, there would be no fee for the sale of or distribution or serving of alcohol in the park. I think they have a similar vendor's permit, and if they were using a tent, they would still do the tent permit.
There's no fee, very much.
Well, the $250 fee would not, I mean, they already are serving alcohol in the parks, and that's not been an issue.
No, I understand that. So, part of our job, sitting on this board, whoever sits on his chairs, I believe part of their job is very much look at laws. That's what we make in regards to things that happen in our community. And there's things that we have modified. We're going to be putting we close the public comment for electrical and plumbing. Those are things that are brought up to our attention where are pretty much not up to code. They're pretty much they're not working properly, or they actually not up to standards where things should be with the state or local wise, different things of that nature. So to me, yes, this particular law has been on the books longer than all of us sitting on these in those chairs. Maybe there was a reason why this putting into place, Um, uh, uh, so there's no reason, to me, we really don't know why this fee was there. I don't know. I wasn't part of that. I don't think any of us here was part of that. Does it make it right? Does it make it wrong? I'm very supportive of local business. I think that's something that we all have said, sitting on these chairs in different ways. And how do we support local businesses? How do we support our economy? How do we support our community as a whole? Not just a group of people, not just people that come in front of us with a particular reason. I think this event is a great idea. 15 years ago, maybe they put something in there because something was happening and they saw something that, they didn't see now. Now is something different. As much as I'm in support of waiving the fee, the $250, I don't think it's the will of the board, the rest of the board, to pass the resolution if that's the case. As much as it saddens me that intelligent people that sit in here, they don't see the bigger picture in some instance, and it's not doing, picking one business to another, picking one person from another, just being realistic in how we can better our community. Again, we have 2 no's, 2 yeses, so to speak. Ideal. I want this event to happen. Really do.
Just to clarify, the 2 no's are solely to waive the fee, not to
Correct.
approve the.
That's
Okay.
based on the resolution right now that
Yeah.
we have. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, correct. So again, I'm in favor of supporting local businesses. I think that's what we're all about. I think that's what we all move to, a small community. I think that's what we pride ourselves to say it. We live in Ossining, we live in the village of Ossining, and we want to help our economy. But if I support this resolution the way it is, it's not going to pass.
So one of the things I want to say, because to me, again, this resolution is not the resolution of all resolutions to decide whether or not you support small local businesses. Me personally, I eat out a lot, particularly here in Ossining, and that is one of the best ways that you can show that you support small local businesses. To me, this is not. There are people who have alluded to that this is a political thing. If you paid attention last week closely to the meeting, I am in support of anyone who wants to come and buy food at these establishments or at the event. Again, the issue comes with parity, right? Here in the village of Ossining, we have charged vendors fees, permit fees, and whatever the case may be. What I don't think is the right thing, or one of the things I want to make sure that we don't do is that we start waiving fees depending on who you are and who you know, right? So some can say that this is the first time that it's happened and we should give it a shot, and that's cool, and that's definitely a process. But others in our community, because of the nature of people's relationships, may view that when you waive this $250 fee that has been on the books for a number of years, that's what that's the kind of privilege that you get when you know someone. So I talked about perspective. So it's not whether or not you agree or disagree with the perspective, but those are 2 perspectives. Now, it would be one thing if you said, "Hey, Mr. Bazemore, you put the fee on the books. You legislated and put the fee on the books when you knew that there were going to be breweries and liquor stores selling alcohol, in village parks, right? And if this is the first time, again, the first time, and it's on the books, then you abide by the process. We have talked over and over and over and over and over again about process and what you do for some and what you do for others. I'm going to keep it simple. I don't have a problem with anyone who chooses to support the business across the street, up the road, whatever the case. This, for me, this is not an issue. This is not political. Last week, this wasn't about malice. I trust me. I work every day. I don't go and talk about ways to stick one colleague over the other. And particularly when we talk about the issues here in the village, we have very poignant and controversial issues that people talk about, and we side on one way or the other. So I want to be very clear. This is not about, oh, do we support local businesses? And this is not the one resolution where we decide to say that if you don't vote for this resolution, right, you don't support local businesses. We have done things as a board, every last one of us, that we have done things during again, back to Ossining Bucks, that we have fully supported to encourage local members to go to small local businesses and all those things. This is not that issue. This is an issue of, if it's on the books, do you follow it, right? And if you don't agree with what I laid out, you can agree to disagree. But everyone is not going to feel as strongly as you do because you particularly support this resolution. So if I think Trustee Casada, what you were referencing to is that in order for this resolution to pass, we will keep the fees as stated, so that that Sing Sing Kill Brewery and all respective businesses continue to market and continue to draw people down to October 19th to continue to celebrate all the local businesses and all the different ways in which we celebrate barbecue. Is that what I was hearing?
Correct.
Okay. Is there enough votes on the board to move to change to make sure that the fees are carried, we're not waiving anything, so that we can proceed to move on with the rest of the meeting?
Something else. Just keep in mind that, you know, we have not waived fees probably in the past, but we do, you know, I remember a couple of years back when we start seeing a lot of local businesses coming into our downtown and kind of filling up some of the empty spots. One of the local businesses that came in asked for sidewalk cafe. And the interesting part was, while I was sitting on the board, that was the first time I actually passed a resolution in regards to sidewalk cafe. And it was interesting to see because typically something like that doesn't come in front of the village board. Usually it's just done in the manager's portion of that. The reason why I came to the village board was because it didn't meet the criteria. They had impediments providing the seating. They had some, they were too close to village property or village items in some of the areas. So we waived those. We have done things to local businesses. You're right. We have done things to local businesses to help them thrive, to help them succeed in our village. So again, I want this to happen.
Just a point of clarity, I was on the board when that happened, and those were waivers to what is deemed in the sidewalk application as obstructions, which
Correct.
Most applications have, whether it's a parking meter or a parking sign or a bench or a garbage can, had nothing to do with the fee. They still paid it no matter what. We didn't waive the fee.
I didn't say we waived the fees. I said we did things to help businesses.
Okay.
Right, but this is about waiving fees.
Okay,
Excuse me, I just want to caveat that in the town and in the village, there are fees on the books for most events and for peddlers' licenses. They are waived in the town, in the village, with regularity. Do some people pay fees because maybe they, for whatever reason, I don't know that it's, I don't want to say it's discriminatory, but I sometimes think that we have events that have been going on for a long time that predate all of us, where maybe fees weren't being paid. So there's a lot of inconsistencies. We can work to change that. But in addition to let's just be clear. The goal is most of the time, when we're looking at waiving fees, whether it's in the town or in the village, it's done based on whether it's nonprofit, a community event. All these events will be stated as good for the community. No one is ever going to come and say we're having an event that's bad for the community. So going forward, I really hope that we look at this and really look at clear objectives and share this knowledge with our friends in the town too, so there's more consistency, so people don't feel like they have to choose between the best deal in a park. But there is, it has not been a perfect system, but I don't think it's because people have been trying to discriminate. I think that people have been trying to do their best at make the events as easy as possible for people.
Can you state 10 events where fees were waived?
I can't state 10 events where fees are waived, but there are events that, there are large events in Ossining that, as far as I know, no vendor fees.
Yeah, so with that said, Karen, I actually appreciate what you said, because it's true what you said. And it predates you. And we've both been involved, and because it's a small community, and it's actually a lot of organizations, nonprofits that we're all part of, actually. We'll disagree on whether it's discrimination or lack of process, but the thing that is fact is that it's been a tolerated way to act in Ossining, and it's been allowed in Ossining. So whether it's you as manager, whether it's Debbie, whether it's the other 5 we had, it's been allowed. And it's gone through department heads in this village, okay? So what I will ask, and I'll put it in a memo for next work session, is that we audit all events the past 5 years. And we see what was paid, what was not paid, who the applicant was, and what services were needed or lack thereof. To actually have a full discussion as to what happened and how that's going to determine us moving forward to remove impediments and make it more equal for all.
Thank you, Trustee Herrera, because it's one thing to say we know that things have happened, but when we don't have the black and white to say this was done, this wasn't done, it makes these conversations hard. So we've belabored the point. Let's get to the resolution.
Trustee Levin, you've barely spoken. You want to say something?
You know what I've learned a lot of things being in politics. So let me share with you, for the public record, some of the things. When you want to bury something, you talk about process and history and what we've done, and you make the idea that elected officials use their discretion as they were elected to do by the public. Because if we didn't need to use discretion on all these events, we would have robots sitting here. Actually, we just have no elected official. The whole idea is to help the public. And the idea that when you do that, it is always under the guise of discrimination and racism and all this stuff is a bit insulting to the people who came here today, and I'll tell you why. Because the people sitting here today who took up their time, instead of being with their kids and working where they're supposed to be working to make the money and get up at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning to drive their kids and had to leave to take care of their families, employ hundreds of people in this community. And the fairs and the parades that we have and all this other stuff that we all talk about as a percentage of what they do for this community, from a diversity point of view, from employment of minorities point of view, of women and men and immigrants and everything else, does not compare in scope. It is actually our job to use our knowledge, our souls, our beliefs, and not to sit there and hide behind a code that was found that existed many years ago. You could do that, but raise it to the level of saying, how can I help people in the community when they come in front of us? This entire discussion arose because if it weren't for the liquor part, if I'm not mistaken, the village manager would have made the decision, because we voted on that a while back. This body voted on it because we all agreed that having people come here every time they want to do an event is not streamlined. The only reason we're here is for Sing Sing Kill, who wants to sell liquor, and that is, I believe, where a lot of the animosity and a lot of history, anybody that follows us, I think we could say all we want that it's not personal, that you could say that, but I think anybody that follows us would probably say, I would take that with a very large grain of salt. I don't like sitting here and going through it. I didn't know we spoke for an hour and a half. I don't like the way I look on camera, so I try not to look at the videos. But big picture, a whole bunch of businesses who employ a whole bunch of people who live in Ossining. What is actually what makes this rare, and I don't even care if you guys make lots of money or don't make, because anytime a group wants to do an event in this community that is a part of this community, stands for what this community, we're supposed to be here and say, let's help them. I actually was hoping we'd talk about sponsoring the damn thing, but I can't get to that level because we're discussing a code and looking back at 5 years. I, as a matter of principle, have no intention of all of the groups. Frankly, we all know that we waive fees all over the place, and we know that it's confusing, the town parks and the village. I think, Manny, you were getting to that because the park right next to it, they wouldn't need to go through it. Yes, Henry Gourdine, when we established it, we should have put a policy in place. Yes, the parks group should have talked about setting a fee. Here's how the fees work. Once a year, we sit down, we agree, and we vote on fees, all fees, every single fee. I had suggested last week that instead of making these people sort of the case to go against, let them do what they need to do. I mean, I don't even know how many people I'll employ. If I added the businesses locally, I don't know, 200-300 people at least, high school kids, people from all backgrounds. It's a lot of people. Pay taxes, you certify with the state, with the county. I mean, it's like the whole gamut. Everything that when a politician runs for office, they go around to your stores and your businesses and tell you how great you are and hope that you'll, sponsor them for something. Only when they run, apparently, not when they're all sitting up here. I'm angry at the amount of time being spent on such a myopic point of view. Businesses should be helped. These are our people here. This is not like an ice cream truck from White Plains coming in for 5 minutes and leaving and taking the money out of this group, out of this place. It's all going to stay here. It should be successful. I don't actually like the refund part. When I saw it, I think we should sponsor them and let them waive the fee for this time and figure it out, because I hope it becomes an annual event. I think when we do the fees, and we talked about it last week, that is when you look at all the fees and you sit there and say who has to pay what, where, and when. I sit on the Parks and Recs Commission. It's a big topic, and it has both Ossining parks that include the village, part of Briarcliff, and the town. And the reason they all work really well together is that they recognize that it is really messy for the public to sit around figuring out which park is what. So it's just using the word Ossining is very deceptive here, because there are two taxing municipalities. What I have to tell you is a positive thing. So I'm a little bit angry, but because I see where the vote is going, and I see that. I just want to make some public statements. Number one, phone calls, talking to each other, so any one of us at any time can talk to staff. I met with the village manager. I did try to reach Stuart, but it's my fault at work. I couldn't get through to him. It's not his fault. Any one of us can talk to anybody else sitting on this and have a conversation and learn what's new. We don't need a formality. You just pick up the phone or you text each other. So the fact that conversation occur, I think, is just really nonsensical. I think that I'd like to help the businesses, and I think by voting against something like this and using this group at this point in time instead of waiting, when are we doing the budget, Karen? When are you putting that together? That includes all the fees and everything.
We'll be starting to work on that
tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay, and that's the annual effort. You don't take piecemeal all this stuff. You look at the fees and you take some up and you bring some down and you look at what's on the legislation. Some of the things here, we're all sitting here because we know some things weren't accounted for, not for any other reason. We set up Gourdine and Park and we didn't account for how to charge for a park. It's not a mistake. It happened. Now we know, and we'll fix it when we do our annual run-through. Instead of building up such animosity between people and bringing so much anger into this, I mean, it's about an event. It's about a few $100s, and we've turned this into a mountain out of a molehill. It's not an appropriate way to behave. I do want to say, I guess, I can't see from here because the lighting, but Mr. Smith's still here? Well, somebody was... Sorry?
Mr. Smith
Okay,
is still
so
here.
here's the thing. We vote on all these fees, and we're going to do it again this year. We do it every year. The public can watch it. And I believe very strongly that's when all of this should be taken into account. And everybody pays those fees. When people come up here, it's because something isn't clear. There are 2 or 3 things here that are not clear. That's the issue here. That's it. Not the racism, it's not discriminatory pricing, it's not that people hate each other. Just want to run an event. Okay? That's it. And the fact that they're for-profit versus not-for-profit is another issue that I asked the village manager to look into. There is a real issue in this village with the growth of the village and the number of events, parades that close down our village. I have to tell you that one of the best things that happened out of all this is, for me, I learned last week that when I thought all this time that the businesses liked all these things, turns out they don't like them so much, or at least some of them don't. It shuts down their businesses. They don't benefit from it. It kills their businesses. We have to take a serious look of closing down our village, all these activities, and using the parks more for those activities where there is safe parking, the police can manage it better, it has facilities, and we have beautiful parks. So actually, I gotta say that I'm sort of thankful because it actually brought up an issue that we should be using our parks and not shutting down the village's office. So, you know, out of all things, good stuff happens. I was hoping that this would not end up being a whole conversation again today, but I do have to say that our non-for-profits who talk about what they do the events for, often, if not always, have for-profit businesses there. We've all been to them. The ice cream vendors, the gyro guy, the stores, the jewelry, those are private businesses under some umbrella that we just sort of hand that over. And I actually did meet with the village manager this week, based on the conversation, and have spoken to a few people. That too needs to be looked at. Because frankly, it is not fair for businesses who are here all year round, hire our people, pay our taxes, to be left out a little bit in the cold while all these other people get to use our public space for their private enterprise, and the not-for-profit manages and gets a bit of that money. I get that. Everybody wins. I don't think that's fair, to be honest with you. That has to be also, and that came out of the meeting last week, of having to, I never even thought of looking at it, but that will be looked at. I think it should be looked at the annual, and I don't think it should be done tonight. I would like to consider that we waive the fee if you guys really, after all this conversation, are not going to change your mind and don't want to compromise on that. It'll end up being a 2-2, so the public understands it needs a majority vote. So a tie vote and abstaining, which I think you did last time, doesn't change it. They need 3 votes. 2 votes is not enough, and I think that's what you think is happening, Manny. Is that right? So I'm back to my original question. If they change the paragraph of the 250, can we pass this resolution or not? We need one more vote, because Manny and I think are voting, as we said last week. We are in full support of making this event as simple to do and not as complicated, although I think that ship has sailed at this point, but in theory, we will make it easier for the folks. So, one of you needs to at least say, so is it that one paragraph about the 250, or is it?
I mean, I already said last week and this week where I stood on it,
Right.
that I would not be okay in waiving the fee, so it would just have to be corrected, and that I also wanted assurance for the applicant somehow in here that they would be responsible for any other applicable fees, such as peddler's licenses and building.
As far as I'm concerned, since I've been village manager, the consistency is the fees are the fees unless the board uses their discretion to waive the fees.
Okay.
So
So we don't have to specify, you're saying?
Actually, the village board has not reviewed any events in a very long time in a public meeting. And that's partly because we changed our code and gave it to the discretion of professional staff.
Well, no,
my
we
understanding
have.
now
And
is, yeah.
when we do this, and I'm really looking forward to what you propose to us going forward for next year's season. And I'm talking about this procedurally, big picture, not just this one event. Whether, however you decide to do the research on, just in this year, we've all attended the Village Fair, the Portuguese Festival. I'm hoping we can attend the Hispanic Heritage Festival next month. St. Anne's, which is on private property. I don't know what things are applicable there. It would be interesting to know what fees were collected for any and all services, vendors, peddlers, whatever. And let me just also say, the reason this came to us is strictly because they want to have alcohol at the event.
Right.
The same thing in the town is true in the village, as is true in every municipality in New York State. If anybody wants to serve alcohol on public property or beyond their premise, they need to get a landlord authorization form signed. We have an additional code just having to do with parks that involves this $250. This is the first time in my nearly 7 years on the village board that we have ever received a request from any organization or any event asking to legally serve alcohol on public property.
Okay.
What does that mean? Does that mean that alcohol has never been served on public property before? It does not. This business and this event is the first one seeking to do it properly. And I'm sorry to have to be the one to bring that up. This business goes out of its way to be compliant with every rule and regulation for obvious reasons, not just because they're decent human beings who want to follow the rules, but because of the same reason why I am not voting on this, why I did not vote on it last week, and why I certainly hope that my colleagues are able to pass it in some form this week. What I am hearing is that the one line, resolved that the filing fee of $250 waived and the village clerk is directed to refund the filing fee to SSKB, that should be stricken, and can it be passed as amended with that removed?
Yeah, that's what was proposed.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what we're
so
gonna
that
do.
is what is on the table right now.
And to just further clarify, to be very clear, I just am not in support of the village waiving fees for for-profit enterprises on public property.
Yes, so noted.
Whether it's a first-timer or not.
I want to be real
First-timer
clear
or not.
I cannot speak to anything that was agreed upon or decided upon before I started here. And I absolutely agree that there are inconsistencies, and especially when it comes to serving alcohol, things like that. They need to be addressed. But we have 3 more events pending within the next 2 weeks, or 2 months rather, and I won't have time to address it. So if right now, I am not going to waive fees for anyone that are on the books. If somebody wants to appeal that to the board, they can. But I'm not going to be in a position, because then it becomes a very difficult decision when we don't have a process that's been analyzed appropriately. So I'm not saying that what we have on the books is the right way to go, but I will not have time to codify a new process that is going to take a little bit of time and obviously require board input.
Okay, with that said, since you have 3 applications pending, and I'm assuming you're going to get more, and there's a couple of events that I saw some information from that haven't been approved for the village yet, so that list is going to be a lot longer. I do need it to be a priority, because I don't want them to go through what they had to go through because of our internal.
So again, to be clear, to really do the analysis is not going to happen in 2 weeks. I'm not going to make up fees and then start.
So then why are you accepting applications if there's no process?
There is a process. What I'm saying is, whatever's on the books right now is what the fees are.
Okay.
I'm not
All right.
going to waive them.
Regardless of past practice.
I cannot speak to the past practice.
So you can't speak-
Because I don't know what was done in the past, and I don't know why fees were
But
waived.
wouldn't that be applicable to you in any area in the village? I mean, then we have to assure that we
Then
get you
the way
educated on that.
Right now, for any practice in the village, it's what's on the books. If
Okay.
I have to
All
make
right.
a decision or waive something at discretion, it's something that, depending on what that decision is, will be discussed with the appropriate people on staff and typically the board. But right now, until I understand exactly what's happening, this is the way otherwise, then I would say, if there's 2 ways to go here, either no fees, or we're going to do what's on the books until we do it. I don't believe that we shouldn't have discretion, but based on this conversation, I don't know what that discretion would be.
Okay, just to clarify, whatever discretion has been used to waive fees, it's not been done with the input of the board.
That's
This is the
fine,
first
but
time it's come up.
But then, until I develop a criteria for waiving things, and if I have something that I feel needs to be waived, I will appeal to the board, or the organization can do it. But otherwise, we are just going to, if you're going to say that we can continue to do this, we're going to continue to have the same problem over and over again. Correcting it is going to be painful because it wasn't done properly for a long time.
Okay.
I'm not blaming anything, I can't speak to it, but all of these things require a little bit of a step back to go forward.
Okay, we had a not particularly long agenda, but we have just gotten to item D. We have a resolution on the table. We have asked to strike the third from last resolved, and Madam Clerk, can you take a vote as amended?
We'll take that out. I'd ask that we move again on the resolution with that paragraph deleted. So if someone wants to move.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a motion on the resolution
Second.
as amended?
Oh, did you say so moved?
I said so moved.
Second.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just going to state, as I acknowledged at the beginning of the meeting, my husband is a partner in Sing Sing Kill Brewery, and so for that reason, it's a little awkward and uncomfortable for me to participate in this conversation. I've spoken with Corporation Counsel. I've also spoken with the General Counsel for NICOM, which is the New York Conference of Mayors, to get some advice. And as is always interesting, it's a learning experience in this seat. Every time we face a new challenge, we learn something new. And I was provided with some resources to read through, and I'll just share one quote. Recusal is an extreme remedy that should only be involved when necessary to avoid a conflict of interest. That's NICOM's opinion. A conflict of interest based on from New York State is when you are dealing with a contractual matter. This is actually not a contractual matter. This is a regulatory matter. We are acting as an administrative body right now, not as a legislative body. So there's no technical conflict of interest. And the reason why recusal is considered an extreme remedy is because each of us was elected to represent the people of Ossining. And when we recuse ourselves, we are not casting a vote. We're not doing our job. And we are abdicating our responsibility. So we have to have a good reason for doing it. So when I have recused myself on matters that have been regulatory, or when I've recused myself in the past, it has been in an effort to avoid the appearance of impropriety, the term that we use, to avoid the appearance of impropriety. I will continue with that tonight, I think, because I think that the regulatory body is going to act appropriately, and so, but it's something that I've really struggled with. I'm stunned at the number of hours that we've spent discussing it publicly and off camera as well. I think that the event itself is going to be really lovely, and I think that in 2020 we will have hopefully a much more clear and effective approach for all events when they come to the village, and whatever is the appropriate way for the village to work with whatever entities want to do wonderful things in our community for the public, and particularly when it's promoting our community. I'm optimistic that next year will be a new day and it will go much more smoothly, and we will instead be spending time promoting these events and celebrating all of the reasons why these events want to happen in Ossining. So, Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I thought you were going to actually.
Oh, do you want me to
I'll
read it?
recuse
That's
myself.
okay.
No, you do,
I thought you
and one recusal.
Okay.
To avoid the appearance of impropriety.
Okay.
Okay.
One second. Mayor, I apologize, and I understand what you've said. I do want to make it clear the position of the Corporation Counsel with regard to recusal and what you have stated is different, okay? And as I represent the board, I don't represent individual board members. I've expressed my opinion with regard to that. I just wanted to be clear with regard to that. Thank you.
Understood.
Okay, so resolution authorizing tax tertiary payment for 38.5 Wolden Road, Audubon Fee LLC and Audubon Fee 2 LLC. Whereas certain tax tertiary proceedings were instituted against the assessor of the Town of Ossining, Board of Assessment Review of the Town of Ossining by Audubon Fee Number 1 LLC and Audubon Fee Number 2 LLC to review the assessment against petitioners' property situated at 38.5 Wolden Road in the Village of Ossining and designated as Section 97.07, Block 6, Lot 9 for the 2016, 2017, and 2018 assessment years, which proceedings were commenced in the Supreme Court of the State of New York, Westchester County, under index numbers 63738/2016, 64571/2017 and 64916/2018. And resolved that the village treasurer shall make a notion in the margin of the assessment rolls of the village of Ossining that said assessments were reduced and payment of a refund of the overpayment of real property taxes were made pursuant to said judgment. And be it further resolved that the pursuant to the consent order and the judgment, the parties to the settlement agreed that the assessed value of the property for the 2019 assessment year shall be set at $9 million, and the overpayment will be for $37,909.23. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolution acknowledging receipt of application for honorary street renaming and referring the application to the village historian. Whereas on or about August 8th, 2019, the village manager received an application for James Dorhan Jr. seeking the honorary naming of the corner of Cortland Avenue and Sherman Place for his father, James Dorhan Sr. And whereas pursuant to the village of Ossining's honorary street naming policy, where the application meets basic criteria including A, the proposed honorary street name, B, contributions to the village of Ossining of the proposed honoree, C, the length of time the proposed honoree resided or continues to reside in the village, D, the name of the existing street to have the honorary street name, E, whether the street already has an honorary street name, F, a map identifying the location of the street to receive the honorary street naming, and G, the proposed honoree's connection to the street where the honorary street naming is sought. And whereas the application by James Dorhan Jr. meets the basic criteria for honorary street naming, now therefore be it resolved that the application by James Dorhan Jr. is referred to the village historian in accord with the village of Ossining honorary street naming policy, and that the village historian shall present her report to the Board of Trustees within 45 days of this referral. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board?
Yeah, I just, a quick comment for those that don't follow us on a regular basis. So this was again brought by a member. This goes to my point that this is actually our job, is to hear the public and things that come in front of us that we may be helpful with and move forward. And so the family did come forward. Once again, not exactly the clearest policy, very typical. Government does is it's what our job is, and so we, I'm sure, moved it more slowly than they would have wanted to, but within, I guess, 2-3 months, we now do actually have a well-thought-out sort of policy in place for naming streets, although I'm sure something else will come up that will surprise us. But for now, I think we've put together a decent policy, and I'm happy about being able to do that for folks. So. Oh.
Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Greenway Community Resolution. Whereas the Village of Ossining is applying to the Hudson River Valley Greenway for a grant under the Hudson River Valley Greenway Planning Grant Program for a project entitled Comprehensive Plan for the Village of Ossining. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the governing board of the Village of Ossining hereby does approve and endorse the application for a grant under the Hudson River Valley Greenway Planning Grant Program for a project known as a Comprehensive Plan for the Village of Ossining community. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Is it for a project known as the Comprehensive Plan?
Plan, yes.
Okay, yeah, it's just a typo.
So sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine. Okay. Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so resolution authorizing the village manager to sign a plan management agreement and business associate agreement with Benetech Inc. to provide retiree drug subsidy administrative services to the village. Resolved that the village manager is authorized to sign a plan management agreement and business associate agreement with Benetech Inc. 1 Dodge Street, Wysenskill, New York 12198, whereby Benetech Inc. will provide retiree drug subsidy (RDS) administrative services to the village for a term beginning August 1st, 2019 through July 31st, 2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board?
So I had a chance to speak with Madam Manager DeTore, and it's my understanding that we are actually saving more money than our previous contract, correct? All right, so...
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Is there any continuing business of the board? Is there new business of the board?
Yes. So today, myself and Trustee Bazemore closed the Change.org petition. It's phase 1 of 3 of the campaign to ask our colleagues and the chief of police to stop their reaffirmation of their observing and escorting of ICE when they're in our community. The petition, particularly in this case, because it is a federal issue being discussed at the local level, was not just limited to village residents for a reason. Also to kind of shed a spotlight on what local communities are doing and their practices are doing it, and hopefully to get some good outside partners to really help us on how to address this if it's not answered or if the request is continue to be denied. So what it says is, it's basically a printout, has all the names and location and the date that people signed. It says to Victoria Garrity, Kevin Sylvester, Manuel Quesada, Rika Levin, greetings, I support Village of Ossining trustee Omar Herrera and Quantel Bazemore's request to give a directive to the Ossining Village Police Department to stop escorting and observing ICE when they come into our community. Please reconsider your decision to allow this, knowing that our local police department cannot help those being questioned, detained, or arrested. Yet we say that OPD escorts and observes ICE for their protection. Make a difference to hundreds in your village and do the right thing. This is not your role. So this is phase one. Phase two is inviting, hopefully we'll get confirmation next week, the ACLU and some other partners to come talk to the board at a work session about best practices and why Croton-on-Hudson and Yonkers and many other of our neighbors don't have this practice at all. So I look forward to that conversation, and I just wanted to thank everyone who signed this petition. I think we got a total of 107 in like 5 days, which is not bad. Do any of my colleagues or chief have any questions? No? Okay.
Nope. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board?
Thank you, very patient people. Welcome.
My name is Aaron Moore. I'm with the Ossining branch of the NAACP, and I'm here concerning the noose incident. I'm going to try and make this quick. I wrote a little something. 100 Years of Lynching by Ralph Ginsberg is a book I partially read because I could not stomach the pain of knowing some of the horrific things it stated that was done to some of my people before me. My grandfather told me stories also of things that to look out for, such as mob gatherings. Yes, this happened in Virginia, where I was born. I don't understand, but I think that the victimizers are sick and insane individuals who blames their shortcomings on another person and would take actions such as hanging, burning, and shooting a third party because he can't afford a Corvette or some other material item. Now, there's one thing that's just as bad, maybe even worse, and that is to stand by and watch, cheer, as though it's a football game. That was the kind of thing that happened in the 18th and 19th century. And if we're not careful, it's going to happen here as well, or it appears to be happening. And we as a community cannot allow this to happen. Pushing hate crimes under carpet, pretending it never happened, gives the wrong impression to some sick individuals. I have to agree the department must have some degree of difficulty finding individuals responsible, placing symbols of hatred at various locations, but citizens of this community must learn that these acts will not be tolerated. There is a bill, Senator Tom Kaminsky, a Democrat representing District 9 on Long Island, sponsored a bill S6648 that requires instructions of symbols of intolerance and hate in curricula for students in grades 6 through 12. This is something that we should adopt throughout the country, not just Ossining or New York State, and we shouldn't have to wait for that bill either. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Late in the evening, I'm not sure I can even stand up. Francine Vernon, resident of the Village of Ossining. At the last meeting of the Ossining branch of the NAACP, the incident of a noose hanging from a tree at our waterfront was discussed. We were told at that meeting that the police chief said that he was going to investigate it and that he would get back to the officers of the branch to let them know the results of his investigation, or at least to keep them abreast of what was happening. I was disappointed to hear at that meeting that even though the officers made an attempt to get information from the police chief about what was happening and what he was learning, they were unsuccessful with that. But I'm even more concerned that he did not include it in his report this evening in terms of the fact that it was an incident and he was looking into it. You need to have a discussion in the community when something like that happens that affects negatively members of your community. And you can't have a discussion on it if it's never brought up to even begin to say, well, what do we do about it? How do we address it? And some conversation. I think that the police chief needs to be held accountable. He said, I will keep you informed. And so therefore he needs to do that, but he needs to bring it out in the public and he needs to bring it to this board. And I'm hoping when he does do that, this board will discuss it and perhaps look at a way that we can address it educationally for the community as a whole.
Thank you, Ms. Vernon.
Can I just respond to something there real quick? Ms. Vernon? Sorry, I'm behind the pole. I got a phone call from the Vice President, Sandy McAllerson.
Yes.
I did return her phone call and left a message. I also got an email from Aaron Moore, which I also returned. And Sandy came and met with me. And that was probably before the meeting. During that meeting, in the voicemail I left and in the email I left for Aaron, I agree. This is something that we should continue a conversation. My suggestion is that we do this together. And that I had offered first to attend a branch meeting, which they said probably not until October would be appropriate because of some reforming of the board, which I understand. But I said, you know, in terms of what types of events we do and what conversation we have, I thought it would be really productive first to have a conversation between us and then to find a way that we could have an event that we would host jointly, because I think that's the best way to include the most people and to get people talking.
I think that's very important, but I think it's something formally should have been said to your board, that they need to know as a board that the incident occurred and it's being looked into.
They were briefed. They were briefed that day.
Yeah. But no one has said anything. So those of us who either watch your meetings or don't watch your meetings or hear what goes on, there has been no formal comment on it.
I understand.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vernon.
Good evening, everybody. Reverend Sean Jones, Pastor Star Bethlehem, member and citizen of the village of Ossining. Yes, I was a part of the initial meeting that we had with the police chief concerning the noose, which was very concerning to not just African American members, but members, I would hope, of all races, of all ethnicities in our village, that we do not want this type of image in our community as it's been shared tonight. And we say this phrase everywhere, that Ossining is a diverse community. In its diversity, education is important. I appreciate Ms. Vernon, what she said today, not just education for the board of what the procedure is and what happens. Madam Mayor, you've had conversations about how we as a village can address the issue. So my thing is this, while I would hope that we can find out who did it, but I do realize some things have been exhausted. My question is, what's the next step? Not just to talk about, say we don't want the noose, but I'm hoping that on tonight, or not tonight, but just in the conversation moving forward, some real solutions where the village would then sponsor programming for education on bias and on those images so that we can have real conversations, whether it's black and brown, white individuals can have a dialogue within the village, sponsored by the village, where then we're bringing in experts, talk about what this issue means and how we can deal with it, whether it's issues of does ICE in our community, whether it's issues of African Americans and nooses. Ossining has a problem. Our country has a problem. And if we don't address it from a systemic place to say that this is systemic issues that are deep-seated, whether you are persons that are immigrants, whether you were brought here in slave ships against your family's will, or whether you desire to be here. The idea becomes, how does we as a village begin to say, regardless of what happens in the White House, that we as a village would then address those issues collectively together. And so my ask, and ask of a clergy of Ossining, is the fact that we can have a formal program sponsored by the village where we're bringing in village residents to discuss in small group format that really is productive about bias and issues, whether it's African American issues about African American, but issues about Latinos, but issues about women, LGBTQ, so we can really address issues so that we can be a better community, so that whatever the concern is, whatever the issue is, we've done our best to really help folk, not give folk the answer, but help folk to begin to have the question, am I biased? Do I care about a noose? Do I care about a swastika? Do I care about hate speech versus LGBTQ or trans persons, so that we can be a better holistic community together? So I'm hoping that as we've had conversation, Madam Mayor and others, that we can begin to seriously, not just talk about it. I know we had the candlelight vigil for what took place in El Paso and Dayton, and that's a tragic event. We've had email conversation, but now I'm asking my village to say, let's put our money where our mouth is.
Thank you,
and
Reverend.
have a real situation, real issue. Thank you.
Chief, you put the police department, we had a whole education program last year. I forgot the gentleman's name.
Yeah, we did. Reverend Jones and I had discussed that before in the past. So yeah, we did. Our department had gone through. We did an implicit bias program with my good friend,
Marks.
Dr. Bryant Marks from Morehouse University. Yeah, we did that as it's a large scale training and it's expensive to bring somebody in. We did that last year. We're looking at something similar for next year, not necessarily the same instructor, because we want to change it up so that there's some newness each time we go through.
So that wasn't.
I know. We know.
I'm not done with my question. I want to ask I'm going to ask a question. Okay, give me a minute to ask a question.
We heard you.
I heard you. I got it. You're not understanding
we heard
my
you, Reverend
question.
Jones.
So the question is, you had this done through the police department, right?
Yes.
So can you call Dr. Marks, and I'll be happy to be on the call with you. Can you find out that we are not experts, first of all, in education, and we are not experts in bias studies, and frankly, there isn't a lot of the school system can be asked to put that as a part of their curriculum. I get that. The ADL has a whole format. It is more to do with anti-Semitism and hate crimes. That may be a place. I'd be happy to, but can you ask Dr. Marks if he has taken that module for the police to help legislative bodies bring them into a village so that it is some sort of a forum and a base for, creating conversation, because it's not really our expertise. I got to be honest with you.
Right. So he does do a lot with police departments because he was part of President Obama's 21st Century Policing Project. But in this area, he does a lot of training for educational facilities. So he did all of New Rochelle School District. Okay. He's from Queens originally, so he did a lot down there. Certainly, I think that what he provides would be appropriate for a municipality in terms of employees and stuff like that. I know that in some places he's even had like public sessions as part of if you book him for something.
So that's what I'm talking.
Okay.
I got it.
If you haven't seen him yet, Reverend Jones, I highly recommend. Yeah, he's fantastic.
Okay. So if you need me to also,
I will reach out to him tomorrow.
A trustee to be involved, let me know.
Mr. Smith, welcome.
Yeah, we want to try to get home. My wife's trying to kill. My problem is this: we don't have a new race problem. It's been a race problem. We have a perception problem. We are perceiving that everybody understands what racism is. We're perceiving that everybody understand what a hate crime is. I don't think everybody do. You say we're not experts. I'm an expert when it comes to discrimination. I was born and raised in the South where I couldn't even go in a store. So some of us are experts. We don't need somebody who writes the books to tell us what racism and what hate crime looks like. You don't have to tell me that hanging a noose is something somebody's playing a game with. It's not a noose because it's not tied a certain way. I know what a noose is when it's hanging, and everybody don't hang a noose the same way. They don't drink coffee and they don't eat bread. It's the perception that counts. If it's there, everybody that's been through it know what the perception is and what the purpose is. We don't have to investigate that. We don't have to worry. We just want to know, is the Ossining community going to give a better perception on what we believe our community should be? And the idea is how we're going to handle this. We're talking about diversity. I'm looking in the courtroom. I came over here, we had 98% white people on this side about a project. We got 98% black on this side talking about thing. So somewhere down the line, somebody didn't communicate to this side the same way they didn't communicate to this side. So even though we're saying we're moving forward and we're diverse, I don't think we are, because we keep depending on somebody else to come in and handle the problems that we have. We need to talk to one another. I don't need somebody to come in and tell me I wrote a book to something happened in 1963 in Concord, North Carolina. I can write that book because I was there. Some of us been in this village for 30, I've been here for 60 years. And I've seen the village when it was high, and I've seen it was low. I've seen the time when all those buildings was occupied with storefronts, and it was empty. So I'm glad to see business come in. I'm glad to see people come in our community. But it has to be a fusion of the people that's here and the people that's coming. The perception to me is that everybody has to feel that we're all exposed to the same rights, we're all exposed to the same privileges, but we also need to say we all have a responsibility to make sure that things like hate crimes is everybody's responsibility. And I thank the board for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Ben Zebelman, Village of Ossining resident. I just want to speak related to your new business component of phase 2 of your campaign to change the village police department's way of working when ICE is in town. I'm not an expert in law enforcement, but I think it's very important that when you're putting your social media out there, that you think, especially putting it out there as a trustee, so your word carries some weight. Your campaign that you ran for the last week with the change.org link, I don't know if you follow it everywhere it went, but in one major Facebook group in the county, somebody right away said something to the effect, and there's no service in here, so I can't read it verbatim, but their comment was something to the effect of, tell that Ossining police officer to get his hand off of that man, stop working with ICE, something along those lines. And I commented, that's a stock photo. Like, your actions have consequences. That you can have your feeling about that, but I don't think it's important to not just throw away the goodwill and efforts that our police department invests in both time, money, and just time, interacting, engaging with the community, always making efforts to be better. And when those messages leave Ossining and they get out there, and you're not out there to pay attention to every post everybody makes, you're not responsible for a post, I'm not sure that the perception that she had is something that, you wouldn't have not been happy about her seeing. And it's a stock photo. You know the one. It's got the two police officers. One says police and ICE, and it has their hand up. This person thinks that that's a photo of Ossining police doing their job. and it's not. It's a stock photo. It's a Getty image. Who knows where it's from? The chief told the community they observe. And we actually got to see it in a video that was posted on social media last week. There was an operation here in the community. It was on Ossining, Padres Hispanos. People were concerned about it. They were seeing it. And after you saw the 3 unmarked ICE vehicles leave, there was a bit of a pause, and then an Ossining Village cruiser left the scene as well. There were no officers on the street. You saw ICE officers getting into vehicles, but what was the word you used? It's observe. What's the first word? I'll pull it up if you don't recall.
Escort.
Escorting.
Escort.
Escorting. Escorting means to bring somebody along. Like, you get escorted out of court. You tell somebody to leave. They don't leave on their own. You have to escort them. You have to physically remove or make sure that they go in a certain direction. Observe is what we were told. If you don't believe that they're just observing, well, then that's a different conversation. But I was just very uncomfortable seeing that response by that person, and I think we have to be very tight with how you're presenting your advocacy in this regard.
Thank you.
So to not put us in a bad light.
Thank you, Mr. Zebelman.
Hello. I'd just like to say thank you, Trustee Levin, for your words and understanding about supporting local business. Just to clarify, the budget for this event is around $6,000. The fees that we would incur from the village would increase the cost to each vendor by 15%. So that's your contribution, 15% additional fees to all the vendors participating. It's incredibly hypocritical to sit here and talk about privilege when you yourself use your position to change regulations in order to have your own events. You have suddenly become interested in process and compliance now that it's somebody else. But in your failure celebration on Election Day, when you shut down a street, a main thoroughfare where people are trying to get home from the train to get to the polls to vote, illegally selling and consuming alcohol in the public street while being a sitting board member, an event that you participate in, the village fair, illegally pours and serves alcohol on the village street a block away from our door. But now process is important, right?
I just want to respond to that. Thank you so much for your comments, Mr. Garrity. I do stand by my vote tonight, and I think we made the right choice in the matter of equity for a private enterprise doing business on public property. With your last statement, the event did go through a channel of a village manager, and that process, it was done by our campaign staff. It's fully open to a review. Yes, we had an event. We called the village. The event got granted. Don't really know much else to say about that. As far as the village fair goes, I haven't been a coordinator in about 4 to 5 years, but I know that they got their permits. I don't know if they got the right permits or if they used them the right way, but that from what I hear from the town, also your experience this year in Food Truck Fridays has been a learning curve for not only the chamber, but for businesses and the town and municipality. I know you also had some challenges serving beer when you first were at Earth Day in the town when it comes to permits and that we receive some actual complaints from. But then again, what I'm saying though is that there's a lot of alleged behavior here. I'm not going to speak to it just because I don't think it's relevant to your application. As far as a personal opinion that you have towards me, you're entitled to that as a person, as a resident, as a taxpayer. And I thank you for your time, and I look forward to going to your event.
I'm sorry,
Rev,
Reverend
yeah.
Jones. It's only no. I'm sorry. After the meeting, we'll hang out for a moment, and you can follow up.
Only get one.
You only get one 3-minute comment.
Okay, it was on a whole other subject. Is that possible?
No, sorry. Well, but we can talk after. We got nothing else to do this evening. We just want to hang out and hear from people.
Oh,
That was before.
That was on the
Just like
legislation.
Mr. Smith spoke before on the legislative matters, and then this is visitor recognition.
I know it's late, but I never come to these meetings, and I'm using this opportunity because I think of these things often, and I never get a chance to really investigate how I do communicate with the board and the mayor and the village manager and clerk, and Stuart and I have spoken about a few things in the past. He's been very helpful. And some of the things I'm going to ask about pales in comparison to the issues that other people are here. Dignity of all, whether it's the ICE issues or the NAACP or that. So I feel sitting here that some of the things I might bring up might pale in comparison to these larger issues, and I am sensitive and empathetic to that as a business owner, and that's one of the reasons why I came to Ossining, because I wanted a diverse community, and I wanted to be able to have somebody come in and get a good, soup and not pay an exorbitant amount of money. And if one more person from Chappaqua walks in and says, "Why'd you open an Ossining?" I tell them, because good food is not just for the privileged. That aside, I'm interested in making Ossining, greener and better, whatever that means. So when I think about things like having a bike rack in front of my store, so instead of the bicyclists that come by, I eagerly invite them to bring their bikes in, because they don't know Ossining. They come from Brooklyn, Manhattan, up. This summer we get a lot of hikers in, and they find us and they come out from those environs outside of here through, apps and so forth. So things like that, things like meters. Every day, we must turn down 20 people that come in and ask for quarters, because I can't go to the bank every day, quite frankly, and replenish my $10 rolls of quarters. Now, these are things that I think about, and I'm like, who do I go to for this? And the other thing is, I've heard a few things this meeting and the prior video from last week about we've done a lot for the small business of Ossining. I don't know if that's on a general, all-inclusive scale or if it's on a case-by-case basis, but I would like to know what those things are. Are they documented? Where do I go look for them? Is there something, a booklet of information, or forgive me, a digital ebook that can be accessed? We all find things the hard way, opening up the business. I always joke, I've bought myself an MBA. It was on the way to building, we learn. And some people in the village were really helpful, but then there were other times where it was kind of frustrating. So as a small business owner, I'm asking, where do I bring these things up to? Do I send an email? I know I sent emails about the parking meters. Why don't we have a debit card? It's out of time.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Gershgorn.
So, communication. You need communication.
Thank you, Ms. Gershgorn.
Thank you. Okay.
My name is Yvonne Burt. I was born in Ossining some years ago, and I'd like to share a letter about this noose which was found in Lewis Engle Waterfront Park. Ossining clergy and leaders concerned about the noose found in the park. The Reverend Sean Ellison Jones, pastor of Star Bethlehem Baptist Church, Reverend Joan Whitaker, pastor of Horak Ministries, Reverend Mary Pfeiffer, pastor of Holy Spirit Church, and Mr. Walter King, the most worshipful Grand Master of Prince, it's moving on me, of Prince Hall Grand Lodge of New York.
Well, okay, we paused. Don't worry. Okay,
That's okay.
you're good. You'll be just fine.
You're good.
Okay. Okay.
You can help her with the technology,
announce it.
Reverend. Go, come on up. We want to hear it. We want to hear it. We just want to be
No, okay.
consistent.
Oh, okay. We got it.
Okay. We'll
I like
restart. We'll
paper,
we'll
okay.
give you back the time.
Okay, Mr. Walter King, the most worshipful Grand Master of Prince Hall Grand Lodge of New York, announced that they and additional concerned clergy and community leaders have sent a letter to Ossining Chief of Police Kevin Sylvester, Ossining Mayor Victoria Garrity, and the Village Board expressing their concern about the noose found in the Lewis Engel Park. As faith and community leaders in the village and town of Ossining, this letter is to inform you that we are concerned about the noose that was found July 31st, 2019 in Lewis Engel Park. Nooses have been used throughout our country's sordid history to lynch its citizens, and in particular those of African descent. According to research reported by the NAACP, from 1882 to 1968, 4,743 lynchings occurred in the United States. Of these people that were lynched, 3,446 were black. The blacks lynched accounted for 72.7% of the people lynched. These numbers seem large, but it is known that not all of the lynchings were ever recorded. While lynchings are no longer regular occurrences, the image or display of a use is still very disturbing. For Americans, it reminds us of a dark and dismal time in this country when we were considered less than human and treated the same. We expect the village police to perform a full and thorough investigation. We want to remind our police and elected officials that the black community views this incident in the same manner that the Jewish community would view a swastika sprayed on a wall. Nooses represent white supremacy and a hatred of black Americans. It is often said that we here in Ossining celebrate the diversity of our residents. This is an opportunity for our police department and elected village officials to stand with and support a segment of that diversity. And as such, we demand that the perpetrators who display this offensive noose be brought to justice. While our country's president may spew hate, we in Ossining don't agree with this type of rhetoric and tangibly support the notion that every resident, regardless of their ethnicity, should be able to live in a community where they are loved, valued, and safe from harassment and hate crimes. Thank you.
Anybody else like to comment tonight? There's no further comments from the community, then I imagine there may be some comments from the board. There's been a lot that's been said. Did anybody else want to have any final comments this evening?
I read the letter that was openly submitted by the clergy and the community, and I thank you guys for that letter, and I acknowledge it. I just wanted to say one thing. I think when Reverend Jones was speaking was not just necessarily what we're doing, but that it should be a grassroots, publicly led effort to do programming around this, not just a reaction or an acknowledgement, but what's next, and not just led solely by who the village feels is best, but who we feel is best. And finding that which I don't know, by the way, finding that balance from the experts versus the actual people who experience and know and how to merge those together to create an environment of how to move forward together. And that's the best way that I could articulate it, but I just wanted to be very clear that, grassroots, publicly led programming with the board, not the board telling you what we feel is the best through experts and through, that's important part of it, but it's with you. It's not just what we say. So I'm more than happy to, Reverend Jones, if you could actually, I don't know if I'm assuming you're the point person, whoever it is, but the more, whoever is appropriate, if you guys can write us like an email for us to set up a meeting to actually start to have a discussion and plan as to what's going to be the next steps and what that looks like and who should be in that room. That way we could actually move forward and possibly even have an update for the public as to where we are now in 2 weeks. So however you feel that's best, you let us know. Let me know. Thank you.
So a couple of things. I wish the owner of Good Choice was here, because I just wanted to let her know that the conversation of parking meters has been a ample conversation. Me personally, I'm in favor of the pay stations, which would eliminate meter heads. I know that there have been conversations with the police chief and former village manager, and I take it that those conversations have presumed with our current village manager, and hopefully
Yes.
as we've had conversations and parking studies and all those things, that we do understand that we are behind technology with respects to how people pay for parking in other communities.
We're on a no more quarter campaign. Yes.
Absolutely.
Montel and I will personally be taking down all the meters.
Absolutely. With respects to some of the comments on ice and pictures, just to bring you up to speed, the last time we talked about escort versus observe, that language came in conversations that we've had publicly, as well as we've had instances where in some of the earlier instances with ice being and Ossining, that there were some pictures that weren't the most flattering, right? So whether or not, and me and the chief, we've gone back and forth about this, whether or not someone's in a car or standing or where they're standing, we don't know what that looks like. Sometimes they're in the car, sometimes they're outside the car, whatever the case may be. So I don't want to belabor that point, but if you feel like I feel, right, I think public safety is important. I think that all community members should be able to contact their police department and not fear, right? I think that those cookouts and backpacks and hamburgers are all great things, right? But if we are not clear about what our department is doing, or if we if we say this is what we're going to be doing, then we really have to measure how we're actually ensuring safety, right? Because it is a perception issue. In fact, we've talked a lot about perception, right? So some communities have decided that they're not going to engage in such practices. This one has chosen another way. Now, we all support all those great feel-good initiatives to have our local communities feel good about our local officers. It has been my stance, it will continue to be my stance, that if you want to ensure that you are the people to call and go to in the times of emergency, that you don't engage in that behavior. We have belabored the point, we have gone back and forth, and that is up to this board as well as the police department to decide. When it comes to this whole conversation about nooses and racism, we often say here in the village of Ossining that we celebrate our diversity, but I think one of the things that I've seen on my tenure on the board is that we're all not celebrating, right? Like we don't all come from a space where we can celebrate each and every day about our diversity, because some members, depending on your race, your class, your sexual orientation, we don't experience life in Ossining the same. It is my hope that along with these community conversations, particularly with the board, particularly when we start talking about white supremacy, that we always look at the policy and how we enact the policy. Right here in the village of Ossining, when we talk about Market Square, some people like to call it the revitalization, but there has been no indemnification of the African American community with respects to the people who lived in downtown. So when we talk about revitalization and what's going to be there, we know that there were black and brown businesses and black and brown people who lived there, black and brown homeowners who were there, and it was knocked down, right? If we start looking at our planning documents, we can see that there has always been a target to move black and brown people around. These are the stories that you need to have, right? These are the stories that need to be shared. This is why when we have these conversations, there's always this amount of tension. This is why, yes, it's good to have a barbecue. It's good to get together over here. It's good to get together over there. It's good to say that we have a busing program and people have been moving around and we're here to celebrate. But the reality is that depending on who you are, it's not a celebration every day. So when we are having these conversations, I like conversations, but I think a lot of times we get comfortable. Ooh, we had the conversation. We need to make sure that going forward that we actually go on with policy. You can say that we stand against white supremacy. You can say, hey, we don't like what our president does, but when it comes to issues with economic development and this planning process and the comprehensive plan and affordable housing and job placement, if you don't have the goal and the mindset to end white supremacy there, then you end up perpetuating what has always happened. So this is not always a party. So as we start having these conversations about nooses and trying to understand experiences, we need the elected body needs to make sure that you're not perpetuating white supremacy in your policy. And I think, in fact, I'm going to go and say it, is in certain instances, we have perpetuated those long-standing policies of white supremacy, because that's not our lens. A lot of us don't come with an equity lens. And as a black elected official, oftentimes we come to this space saying, hey, pay attention to us. But if you're really going to have these conversations, I don't care if it's ICE, if it's affordable housing, if it's job training program, if it's the youth bureau, it is incumbent upon those with privilege to have those conversations. Because the reality is I'm not going to be here next year, right? And that is the problem. Is that black and brown people always go into spaces saying this is what you need to do. It's upon those in our different forms of privilege to actually push forward those policies. I am not an immigrant. I do not agree with the policy. They are not coming to get my grandmother, my aunt, or my cousin. But I know as a privileged American here in this country, and I know the experience of being an African American and where I come from and what that looks like, I can empathize enough to say, hey, I don't agree with this policy. So, I encourage all those, if it may not be your issue, right, to really, if you have the privilege, to use that privilege. Be a co-accomplice. So if we're going to have these conversations, let's move past conversation. Let's move past the dialogue. It has to be policy. It always has to be policy.
You want to comment?
I have to say that we have a board that is made up of minorities. All of us are minorities on so many different levels. I find it always divisive when a minority group positions itself against another. I think most of these store owners that were sitting here actually weren't white. And, a lot of them are Hispanics. It's not something we ask people to say on the microphone. We don't ask for your sexual preference. We don't ask for your background. We don't ask. And what I learned from somebody who I've learned a lot from, who's a member of your church, Quantel, is that no one knows the life that people lead and how they get to where they are. And some of your conclusions about people, and when I watch these store owners and how many of them employ so many folks here of all backgrounds, genders, and, up and down. We have a growing Muslim community. I don't believe I saw anybody, although one person is married to somebody from the Muslim community. I I'm a relativist, and in relation to the rest of Westchester, we may not be perfect, but you know what? There isn't a community that's perfect, not even in the books and in the movies. So for me, I've lived here almost as long as you've been alive. I may not have been born here, but this community is highly diverse, and whether you celebrate diversity and whether there's racism, yeah. I mean, seriously, of course there's racism here. It wasn't created in Ossining. It's not worse here than it is in other places, arguably. People here address it, so it's a little bit more painful because of that, because in some communities, we wouldn't be sitting at 10 to 11 even having this conversation. Most of these meetings end in about half an hour because there's no openness, there's no transparency. So I find that some of what you do is actually creates divisiveness, and I think belittles, especially tonight, when factually, I'm not making this up, you could hear the names of the people, some with accents, some aren't. I didn't take account, but I don't know. Maybe you aim for perfect and I don't, but I find some of your commentary, while very moving, I think not helpful in moving this community to a better place. So, and you and I have had these conversations before. It's not like the first time we've had this conversation. So to me, it makes me a bit sad. And let me say this, that you've been in politics for a decade, from Young Democrats to a whole bunch of things. You've sat on this board for 1.5 years now?
4 years.
I'm sorry.
4 years.
We started at the same time. Why did I say 1.5 years? I'm sorry.
Well, because you started
4 years. I started a month before you.
5.
2 months before you.
Started
No,
in
November.
September. You started in September.
Okay. A couple of months before you. We've both been here for a few years. And I have to say that you've had every opportunity to have this conversation and build conversation and write a bill and bring policies. And, you haven't. You have worked on affordable housing. But we are a legislative body, so you could be an advocate for a lot of stuff, but don't sit here and complain about everybody else and what they did or didn't do. You really haven't brought up a policy. So, from my perspective,
Can the room please
matter.
can the room please stay quiet?
Yeah.
Please stay quiet while the meeting is continuing.
So, I don't need to stop anything. You know what? Here's the thing. I get elected into office to run. I get elected to where I get elected to represent the public, and that's what I'm trying to do. So listening to people's opinions is just part of it. Anyway, so that is, we can keep doing this all night.
But
I'm okay.
I want to clarify.
I find that your commentary is just divisive. So for me, that's really my only comment.
So I just want to say,
because my point's very.
Okay.
I'm actually very glad that was said, because I think it's very important for everyone to know where your elected stand and how they feel, whether you agree with us or not. With me here. One thing, though, that I said over and over again, which I'm glad she said it, because she was actually, and by she I mean Trustee Deputy Mayor Enrique Levin, they've been calling the initiatives that first were started by Deputy Mayor John Codman and Quattleton Bazemore, which was around ETPA. Then they did it towards me, but each time the notion or conversation about racism, or Quantel spoke as a black individual, or the black experience, or I brought up being a Latino, or you saw her use a word that it's divisive, which we all know is a racial undertone, and how we've responded to those communities. And what we've called them agitators, bullies. We've heard people on the board say that, they make us feel uncomfortable. We've called them out on not agreeing on your way of advocacy. That's the reality. And what you experience now is someone uncomfortable being called out for their privilege. So thank you.
So I just want to say, Trustee Levin, if you have a chance, just go home and listen to what I said, because I really don't think you heard me at all. I gave you an example of a policy in which I used my own privilege. If you don't see things like the affordable housing policy and ETPA as protecting low-income Black and brown people and poor people in general. That's why when you saw those issues, that it seemed like one side of the room was very Black and brown and the others weren't, right? So we've had conversations. You just haven't understood those lenses, right? You have not heard me, and here's my challenge. There's a lot of people who want to call us divisive, right? Because we bring up issues. There's a lot of people who come out. The thing is, though, you cannot run away from the challenge. You actually have to lean into the tension, because that's actually what's been happening in Ossining. There's two Ossinings, right? And then when certain things happen, you see one group over here and one group over there, and there's been a lot of people talking about coming together and how we should come together, but you actually have to address those tensions. When we're talking about policies for youth and stuff like that, and when we talk about the BEAMS program and offering free programming, when we budget things like for the fashion exchange program, we are doing that because we know that there's a group of people who can't afford certain things. So maybe you don't see it that way, and I understand it, and you know what? And I'll take some onus on that, right? But the reality is that there have been things that have been done. And your position typically is, I am here to represent the homeowners and the taxpayers, right? Like that is typically your thing, and that's cool. But please go back and look and listen to what I said, right? Because the reality is that there have been 10,000 African American elected officials here in this country. You have the CBC, and they always have a group or an agenda or a platform, and it moves nowhere because their white counterparts don't make their issues, the Black people's issue, their issues, right? So there's an issue with political process, right? We sit up here and we claim that we're Democrats, right? But we're really Democrats in name only. Right? So again, however you twist it, however you take it in, you may not like the tension. If you don't like something being divisive, then that's okay. But the reality is that if there's tension over here and you don't address it, and then we're always saying, hey, we're Ossining, we celebrate our diversity. We celebrate our diversity. Right? If we all have different experiences and we're not talking about that thing and we're not dealing with that in policy, it doesn't make sense that, oh, we have a majority minority board, because that just means we're here to put on the perception, right, that we're actually dealing with issues.
Manny, did you want to say anything?
Yeah.
No, I'm not done. I have a comment I'd like to make.
Okay.
Yes. You know, early today I made a statement where I said I come here and I learn a lot. I learn a lot every time that I sit here and listen to my colleagues, listen to the public. And I do have to, I definitely want to go back to the video and actually listen to all the comments, because part of what it kind of bothered me, and I guess maybe I focused on the wrong item where you said white supremacy and this board makes policy based on that kind of issue. So that kind of bothered me. So, but I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the video, and I'm going to make sure I got that topic right. As far as I know, my color of skin is a little brown. I was not born here. I was born in Ecuador. Came here when I was 15. I've been in Spring Street for the past 20-some years. Every policy that I have, that I've worked on it, I have help on it, I have support on it, has been to benefit our whole village, our whole community. So it's interesting that we all sit here, and yes, we are all different, as you guys know, and we all have different ideas and different concepts is what we want Ossining to be. One thing I do want to say, you mentioned that you will not be here next year sitting on the board. That doesn't mean you'll not be able to participate, come into the meetings and talk to us and be involved on part of what could be the next phase of the comp plan. I was involved. I came to meetings. I wrote to you guys. But you know what I'm saying. So if you want to be involved, and it's not just to you, it's for anybody that comes in and sits here or watches our meetings 11 o'clock at night. So I'm sure some people may not be watching us now. But that's the point is, if you want to be involved, can definitely be involved. We always asking for people to write to us. We always asking to people to come to the meetings, to be involved. Not just when it's a particular issue. We want to hear from you, because we are elected. You guys elected us to represent you guys. So, but if we don't know the issues, we cannot figure it out. It's a lot of stuff that we talked about here, and I'm not going to go into a lot of details because one thing said, perception and reality is one of the biggest issues that we are having, not just in Austin, but country, in the whole world right now, and what is going on. But that's a different conversation. So I really want to thank everybody that came out here tonight. I thank you very, very much. Looking forward to definitely having more conversations about different topics. Reverend Jones, I'm going to be definitely reaching out to you because I have a couple questions. So call you tomorrow, if possible. But it's just, again, I learn a lot every single time I sit in this chair. So thank you, all my colleagues, for that, and to the public.
So before we finish this up, I do want to, there was a question from community members, Chief. They were asking about the investigation, and I know sometimes you're limited in what you can say about an ongoing investigation, but can you provide us with any update regarding the noose incident?
No, I mean, I think that where we're at right now, everything that I've told the board, I shared with the NAACP this morning in the email that I sent to Mr. Moore. We had a number of stories from residents who told us that they were in the area that day or earlier or days before. Some of those we were hopeful were true because they led to things that were relatively benign, either that it was used for hanging a banner, it was used for suspending a power cord for some other event that's going on. We confirmed that none of those stories were in fact true. We've checked for video in the area. We've interviewed a number of people who said that they were in the park that afternoon. And at this point, we've exhausted all of the information that we have. But we're never going to close an investigation like this until we have something concrete. So if anybody has any information, we'll always encourage people to talk to us. But we have investigated and exhausted all of the information that we received so far, which included talking to people that were in the park, speaking with people at the Boat and Canoe Club. There are no cameras that cover that portion of the train station area. There's cameras, I believe, at the train station that only cover Metro North property up there, but nothing that we have in the parks.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you to everyone who came tonight. There was quite a range of topics that were addressed, both formally and informally, whether we were talking about nooses or parking and economic development or improved communication, vendor fees, policies related to ICE, compliance or violation of state liquor authority. There was a lot that was brought up, and not all of it resolved, certainly. And I do want to just remind, thank you, Reverend Jones, and the woman, I don't know that she's here anymore, and I'm sorry I didn't catch her name, who read the letter aloud that you sent, that the collection of ministers sent to us earlier this month. And I'll just, let's close with a reminder of the last phrase of that letter, which should be a goal for all of us in this room and in this community. That every resident, regardless of their ethnicity, should be able to live in a community where they are loved, valued, and safe from harassment and crimes. That sums it up very well. Thank you. And I look forward to working with our partners in the community to figure out how we can do a better job going forward on all of these things, those that are incredibly important and those that are regulatory and just need to be figured out. Can we have a motion to move into executive session for matters of personnel related to specific persons, which I believe will be brief? No, not for you. It's not for you.
Oh, Chief. Oh, okay.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I would like to remind everyone that there is not a village board meeting next week, so we will join you on the Wednesday after Labor Day. I believe that is September 4th. This meeting is adjourned to executive session.